this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, February 15, 2017. And can I have Director Martin lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here. Okay, next is adoption of the agenda for the regular meeting of February 15th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved in second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, presentations.
All right, so thank you, President Elitharp. We have 4 presentations today, and the first 2 are presentations of awards to 2 of our employees. And as we all know, the most important asset any organization has is the people that they have. And the employees' knowledge, skills, and abilities go a long way in determining the success of an organization. One of the ways employees can demonstrate their competency and proficiency in their craft is to obtain certifications through recognized state agencies, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So if I can ask President Elitharp to join me down on the floor, we'd like to recognize our 2 recipients. So the first employee we'd like to recognize is Murguia. So Ivan, if you can come down here and join us, please. Everyone give him a hand. So Ivan joined us in September of 2013 as a wastewater treatment plant operator 1. I think it was about a year and a half later he was promoted to treatment plant operator 2. And recently Ivan received his wastewater treatment plant certification grade 4 from the State Water Resources Control Board. In the wastewater industry, that's a big deal, getting that recognition and getting that certification. So, Ivan, thank you. Congratulations, first of all. Thank you for your commitment to your craft and all the contributions you made to the Vallecitos Water
Question?
What's going on back there?
Yeah, I have a question for Ivan. Oh, they're gonna want to take another picture first.
Yeah.
Okay. Take another.
Belt and suspenders with me.
That's all right, that's okay.
All right.
Question, Ivan?
Yes.
Are there 5 categories, or are there more than 5?
There's 5.
There are 5. And is it the testing, is it not only knowledge, experience, written? Can you give me an idea?
It's a combination of both.
Uh-huh.
The higher the grade level, the more detailed and the more you have to know for each certification.
And do you go to classes to prepare, or is it all self?
Yeah, there are classes.
Oh, good.
Locally through like Palomar College.
Uh-huh.
There are courses they could take online as well through the state.
Oh, very good.
But as you go up, you go basic, advanced, and the higher grades.
Well, terrific. Well, congratulations. We appreciate it very, very much.
I just had one. Is there no level 3? Or did you just skip it because you're so great?
Yeah, I had my 3 and I bumped to
Oh.
4.
So there's a difference between our internal job classifications, and he's a 2, but then there's the state certification, which has their own gradation. So he's in our language, he's a wastewater treatment plant operator 2, but he has a grade 4
Or
certification.
treatment. Well, we'll probably see you in another few months again.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, good job.
Congratulations. So our second team member is David Joyner. David, you can join us up here. So David joined us in August of 2009 as an equipment and instrumentation tech in the mechanical and electrical department. And David recently received his Programmable Logic Controller 2 certification from Valencia College back in January of this year. So And with that, David will be able to help us better operate our systems in the most reliable, efficient manner possible. So thank you for your, congratulations on your accomplishment, and thank you for all your contributions.
Got it. Thank you.
And I'd like to quickly thank the staff members that joined their teammates. It was really nice for them to come out and show their support. Okay, so our next two presentations tonight will come from Mr. Mike Steinlicht, the General Manager of the Encina Wastewater Authority. Mike, and along with some supporting personnel, will update us on the EWA's water reuse feasibility study and also talk about EWA's capital improvement program. The CIP is a big deal because as a member agency, Vallecitos will pay about a little less than a quarter of all the costs to construct, operate, and maintain those critical wastewater infrastructure facilities. And I thought it'd be helpful for our board to hear directly from Mr. Steinlicht on how those efforts are going forward and how they may affect us. Mike's been with EWA for 25 years, long time, and I think he's coming up on his 1-year anniversary of being named their general manager. So with that, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Mr. Steinlicht.
Thank you, Mr. Prum, General Manager Prum, and good evening, Mr. President, Directors. It's always a pleasure to be here at Vallecitos. I've been a resident for nearly 30 years. This is my home agency. I live very close by. All my kids graduated from San Marcos School, so I really enjoy coming and speaking with you on Encina's activities and giving you an update. As General Manager Prum stated, that we are here to give you an update on water reuse feasibility, and then he also asked us to give us an update on CIP, and we expanded that a little bit. Going to give you a little bit of update on the 2018 budget, as well as the CIP and the 5-year look ahead. Back in August of 2016, the Encina Board of Directors asked staff to look at a water reuse feasibility study, and so we've been working on that for the last 8 months. And with us today is Mr. Scott Goldman. He is the one that we chose to lead this project. He is the principal with RMC Water and Environment. And with that, I'll invite Scott up to, one of the things that we really wanted to accomplish out of this study was to see what we could do with the nearly 20 million gallons a day that we send out to the Pacific Ocean every day. So to give you an update, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mike. Board members, pleasure to be here. Along with myself on our team, I have Nathan Chase with RMC and Ken Weinberg. Retired after many years with the Water Authority, so we've, not that we drug him out of retirement, he hasn't actually stopped working, but Ken's got a vast amount of knowledge that is very useful in this. So what we'd like to do today is, the way we're approaching this study is I'll present a little bit of background to put the reuse in context with North County. And then our goal with this project is to develop a portfolio of options, really get everybody's input and ideas to develop a broad range of alternatives and consider everything. Then we developed a screening system and criteria to narrow down all those options to identify the 3 most likely options to carry forward into a more detailed analysis and refine a preferred alternative, and then look at how to phase and identify options for funding. We also have engaged a stakeholder outreach program to make sure we get plenty of feedback from all of the agencies that may be impacted by this. Encina's primary focus is wastewater treatment, and a project like this involves water retailers and water purveyors. So we want to make sure we engage with the water community as we're developing this project. So what makes a project feasible from Encina's standpoint? Well, we want to make sure we're maximizing the use of the available effluent on a year-round basis. We want to look for cost neutrality from Encina and preferably generate some revenue from the value of that water. We want to make sure that the core mission of Encina is satisfied and those costs are covered, and the value of the water needs to be realized in order to offset any facilities that need to be constructed. We also wanted to look to maximize the benefits from an EWA member agencies first and within the service area, and then if there are other benefits to be realized regionally, then those would be secondary to the interests of the member agencies. There will be a need for advanced treatment on a reuse project of this scale, and we were limiting that to the south parcel, which is currently owned by Encina, or it's potential that it could be down at the San Leo Joint Powers Authority plant, depending on what the option is, and you'll see that as we go through those options. And then finally, we're not considering anything where we would divert wastewater away from the plant or building any satellite plants beyond Meadowlark. Meadowlark's the only satellite plant that currently exists. The Gaffner plant for Leucadia takes secondary effluent from Encina, and it was anticipated that the basis of this study would be looking to use secondary effluent as the source water and not wastewater. So in order to establish the basis for this study, we lined our project up with the process master plan that was just created. Yes, happy to answer any questions as we.
I'm so sorry, thank you.
Yes.
You're just, before you started on the next page, you said the secondary water is considered wet and not wastewater? I just missed what you said.
No problem. So in this study, as to define the scope of the work, we're using the secondary effluent that's currently being discharged to the ocean as our source water for recycling.
Okay.
We're not looking to take wastewater someplace and treat it elsewhere.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, just missed the word, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Quick question.
Yes,
Is anyone else doing that today?
well, there's two. So the wastewater is being treated by Vallecitos. You take wastewater off the system, scalp it, reuse it, and then put the solids back. Secondary effluent right now is being used by both Carlsbad and Leucadia. They take secondary effluent from Encina prior to ocean discharge, treat it further, and then use it for recycling.
How much do they use?
I'll show you
Oh,
as we
thank you.
continue. So we lined up this study in the same planning horizon as the process master plan for Encina, a 2040 timeframe. The phase 5 expansion, the last major expansion of the Encina plant, increased the capacity to over 40 million gallons a day. Right now, we're flowing somewhere around 20 million gallons a day. Water conservation has had a big impact on flows. And so in the process master plan, we reevaluated where we thought we would be in 2040, and we're now thinking we're going to be somewhere between 26 and 31 MGD in terms of the wastewater flow contribution to Encina in the year 2040. So we selected 31 MGD, that's kind of the high end of the range of where we think the flows will be as our planning horizon for this facility. So there's a total of 31 million gallons a day of wastewater being treated at Encina in 2040. In terms of how much of that's available for effluent reuse, additional reuse, we had to consider the current commitments. So Carlsbad plant was just recently expanded to 7 MGD. We reached out to them and they told us there's a potential by 2040 they could expand to 10. So 10 MGD, 10 or 12? 10 MGD is the ultimate size that we're allotting kind of as a base load for Carlsbad's demand. And then Leucadia, they currently treat about 1 million gallons a day in the summer. They told us they could potentially expand to 2.5. And again, both Carlsbad and Leucadia, these are irrigation systems. They have high summer peaks and very little winter peaks. So you'll see at the bottom, the purple line, that's kind of the irrigation demand cycle throughout the year. So we wanted to make sure that we could run our project year round. And with these recycled non-potable demands, with the projected wastewater flow, we've developed our alternatives around the 20 million gallon a day summer availability so we could run a project year round. And that's the yellow dashed line that you see on the chart in front of you. So 20 million gallons a day of flow doesn't necessarily result in 20 million gallons of product. So this graphic shows you the influent flow of 31 to the Encina treatment plant, and then secondary effluent that flows to the Carlsbad or the Gaffner plants for additional treatment for reuse. There's 12.5 MGD between those two plants. The remainder of the flow would then be diverted to an advanced treatment facility to produce a higher quality water So we could do some form of potable reuse. There's losses from that. We lose backwash water off the microfiltration membranes. That is suitable for non-potable use, so that can come back to the Carlsbad, the Leucadia plants for recycling, and then there'll be a brine discharge of some amount, which we've assumed here about 15% of reject for the salts that would continue to the ocean. So we end up with a net of around 16 million gallons a day where we start with 20. So as we go through these options, you'll see that's the product, that's the water that gets produced in a usable format. So I wanted to step back, bigger picture within the region, and sort of put this project in the context of what else is going on in North County. So we're part of the, you are as well, you're part of the North San Diego County Water Reuse Coalition. This table comes out of that study, and as part of the North County Coalition, we looked at how much wastewater is being generated within each of the, within that North County Coalition group. And in 2015, the total wastewater flow being generated is 59,000 acre feet. And by 2035, projected to increase to 88,000 acre feet. Looking at the recycled water demands by agency, out of that, out of all the agency projects, there's about a little over 10,000 acre feet currently being recycled, and this is as of 2015. So we're only currently using about 18% of the wastewater that's being generated. By 2035, well, I'll just jump right to the 2035. This is projected to increase to about 44,000 acre feet by 2035, and this is based on the projections we got from each of the member agencies that are in the coalition. So we're looking to increase to about 50%. And this is outside of the 20 million or 15 million or so that's available from the Encina plant. So, so if this project results in another effort, this is really focused on that other 50% that's not really been identified as an alternative reuse. Yes?
Let me ask you a question. Currently, Vallecitos Water District shows 0 existing. And in the year 2025, a mere 8 short years from now, you're projecting 1,679. Where's that going to?
So the future increases, these are anticipating that at some point there would be some advanced treatment on some of the water out of Meadowlark, where then it could be developed into the groundwater recharge project in the San Marcos Basin. So this project looked at, we were trying to identify all possible opportunities for recycling. And James, if you want to help here, James provided these estimates for us. And I think these were done prior to your master plan.
Yeah, thank you. Director Martin, as you may recall, one of the things that we talked about was expansion of Meadowlark to about 1.5 million gallons a day, which will allow us, since we have contracts for up to 5 million gallons a day of recycled water for Carlsbad and Brittenham Water District, that 1.5 million gallons a day would give us either additional recycled water distribution system based on board direction, or the ability to actually do some type of potable reuse in the future if the regulations so permit. So this is kind of, if everything falls into place, this would be an opportunity where we could use that 1.5 million gallons a day and turn it into a potable reuse job of some sort, which we also talked about on Monday. In the same fashion. Timing's a little different because this report was done beforehand and our master plan came afterwards.
Can we use 5.0 in the winter? Us, Vallecitos?
We don't have the room to build a 5 or 6.5 MGD alternate advanced water treatment plant on the Meadowlark site. That would be a challenge, but granted, as technology increases, that may become an opportunity. We'd be building vertical though. It's a very small site, and we're pretty much allocated almost all of it.
Okay. I just want to know where these numbers came from, because I haven't heard us even speak about these numbers.
Yeah,
internally.
on Monday we discussed some of these numbers, but we looked at it as a small distribution system coming out of Meadowlark into the Lake San Marcos kind of area, and into the San Luis Hills area, and also, when they talk about the potable reuse job, whether going into the basin or going to possibility South Lake, if you recall from Monday's presentation, those numbers kind of combine to bring these numbers. So they
You
that's
said
what
potable
we're-
or indirect potable?
This is,
This is potable. We haven't really distinguished between indirect and direct yet.
Well,
for us, it was potable reuse, future potable reuse opportunities, and the indirect potable reuse opportunities, we looked at the basin, and then that was about it, because Lake, South Lake was much too small.
so you think within 8 years, we're gonna be ready for potable reuse?
If the regulatory agencies allow it, within 8 years, we could be ready for potable reuse, but it is.
Scientifically,
Scientifically, yes,
possible,
possible.
but that's not really the question, is it?
Plausible, no.
Okay, I just wanna know if the number is possible or plausible. Thank you.
And I will say, these projections were made back in 2014, so it was 10 years when James made the estimate, so. anyway. Yes?
Excuse me, Scott. I realized what you've just said is this is a potential, it's not a guarantee. The potential is there, as James said, if everything is perfect. So when we say that's a potential, is it still a conservative potential? I mean, are we saying this is a realistic potential, the 1679 for us or the 68 for the city of San Diego? Are they, I mean, as people giving it to you, is there a level of reality checks? I
So
realize in the
I-
possibility.
Yes, and
We're not
let me give you
way.
a little context on the North County Coalition project. So it's a funding-driven project. So the idea of this project was to go after federal funding. So everybody wanted to be very aggressive with their
Okay.
estimates. So if we got federal funding and somebody else was willing to pay for it, then I'd say, yes, this is a very realistic project. So that was kind of the view going into this. We didn't want to be conservative, we wanted to be aggressive.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you, Scott.
So a little more regional context in terms of facilities. We have the 5 wastewater facilities within the study area, the Encina plant, and then the 3 recycled plants that we talked about already, and then the San Leo treatment plant, which is a little further south, but that's jointly owned by the city of Encinitas and Solana Beach. And the Encinitas, they are a member agency of Encina, so half of their flow, the north half of the city flows to Encina, and the south half flows to San Leo. So the 2 plants, and there are some plans for additional reuse out of the San Leo plant that made sense to include them in this study. And then we look at groundwater opportunities. There were 3 groundwater basins identified, the San Marcos Basin in your service area, and then down south, there's the San Leo and San Dieguito basins. Now, none of these 3 basins are currently used for potable recovery. Elitharp Water District has done studies on the San Alejo Basin, and they're currently doing another study on the San Dieguito Basin. So as the value of water gets more and more expensive, then the opportunities to recover from these groundwater basins become more and more real. So the groundwater basins are one of the RPR opportunities, and then we have surface storage. So we looked at the San Dieguito Reservoir. That's a smaller reservoir that's owned jointly between the Santa Fe Irrigation and San Dieguito Water District. And then also the Elitharp Hodges, Lake Hodges. So Hodges feeds the San Dieguito Reservoir, and it also is tied into the Elitharp Reservoir through their pump storage project. And we had a stakeholder group meeting, I think it was back in December, and as a follow-on to that meeting, we met with the City of San Diego and the County Water Authority. Our initial group of alternatives, we were looking to go to Lake Hodges as a surface water storage opportunity. And what the Water Authority in San Diego explained to us is it's not very usable from the Water Authority's perspective if it goes to Hodges, because they have to then move it up to Elitharp. And then Hodges is also used to try and keep low in rain events so they can capture as much runoff. So through that discussion, we eliminated Hodges as a place we would take water to, and we looked at Elitharp Reservoir. Still a lot of complications in putting water into Leeuwenhoek, but more feasible because of all the operational complexities that go into Hodges, that we treat them as a system, and for the water authority in the region to use water, it would have to go into Leeuwenhoek. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure we looked at the other raw water opportunities. There's a raw water aqueduct in both Aqueduct 1 and 2, and then we have the water treatment plants, Badger and Twin Oaks, and then Carlsbad. Now with water treatment plants, you can go upstream of the water treatment plant, which is raw water augmentation, and actually the recycled water would be fed through the plant, or you can go downstream where it's a pipe-to-pipe flange type of project. Different considerations from a regulatory standpoint and timing standpoint. These are all the facilities in the area, and then we developed the portfolio of options. So we've kind of talked around this, but there's three primary categories that we looked at. Non-potable reuse, or NPR, which we're taking as a base load. Basically, the member agencies of Encina are already doing these. We've allotted that amount of water. IPR, which would be groundwater basins. We have the 3 groundwater basins. Or surface water augmentation, which is similar to the project that the City of San Diego is pursuing. For surface water, we have the Leeuwenhoek Reservoir and the San Diego Reservoir. And then DPR, which is raw water augmentation, which we could go to the Water Authority Aqueduct 2, or we could go influent to the Poseidon plant, or we could go to the Twin Oaks plant. Or we do DPR, flange to flange, in which case we go to the closest drinking water pipeline, which is the one coming out of the desal plant. So this is the portfolio, well, these are the options. So we put portfolios together, and I'm going to turn it over to Nathan to talk about that process.
Thank you, directors. So given this regional context of opportunities for reuse, we developed, as Scott mentioned, a portfolio of options that assembled them together in ways that made sense based on geography or potential phasing opportunities. So you'll see here we have 9 different options, letter-coded, and these are arranged alphabetically, but the top 2 are direct potable reuse only options. The next 2, C and D, are IPR options only. And then the following 5 are a combination, which lends itself to some phasing, potentially doing the IPR work first. And you can see that for all of them, there's that baseline of the 12.5 MGD of non-potable reuse recycled water systems that's been committed to Encina's member agencies. And in terms of the potable reuse volume that's generated through each of these projects, for most of these, it's the 15.7 that Scott showed on the flow diagram earlier. But I'll mention that for option A and option E, you'll see that the brine generation is higher because we're integrating the advanced treated water upstream of the desalination plant at Carlsbad. And by the blending with seawater and the lower recovery of those RO membranes, you'd actually get a higher amount of brine generated and therefore lower total reuse. So that was a consideration we took into account. Also, I believe that Jim may have seen this before, but the only difference here from when we presented before was the change from Hodges Reservoir to Leeuwenhoek, and then option G is a new option that looks at tying into the second aqueduct close to the Badger water filtration plant. So based on this portfolio of 9 different options, we wanted to develop some screening criteria to begin to evaluate these, to hone them down to the best options, to carry forward into a more detailed cost analysis. So these are essentially proxies for cost as well as for the timing and feasibility of the project to help identify which ones would be most advantageous. So we looked at the regulatory certainty and permitting effort, going from the forms of potable reuse that are currently permitted, which are the groundwater recharge projects, such as you see in Orange County. Then surface water augmentation, which is expected to be, we should have regulations later this year. Direct potable reuse upstream of a water treatment facilities, so the source water augmentation. Potentially by 2021, we'd have regulations. And then the direct potable reuse flange to flange, which the state has said is feasible, but still has not set a time frame for when those regulations would be released. So that was an example of how we considered the variation between each of these options. We also looked at the level of treatment required, which for all of these we're expecting that you would require an advanced water treatment facility, which, as Scott mentioned, could either be located at the Encina South parcel or San Alejo for the options in proximity to that. There's operational considerations, both on the existing facilities as well as how this new water would be integrated, say, into a reservoir or into groundwater basin. The conveyance was a major piece on this. Some of the options require much further pipeline distance or pumping head elevation, so we took that into account, as well as the stakeholder challenges. Some of the options involve a few stakeholders, aside from Encina and its member agencies, other involve more. So I won't get into great detail on this, but happy to answer any questions if you have them. We developed a scoring system for each of those five criteria and a weighting, and then applied that across our 9 options to develop a score and a ranking. So you'll see that the top rated option is option G, which looks at going to the San Dieguito Reservoir for surface water augmentation, and then raw water augmentation at the second aqueduct. And the second highest scoring option is the second aqueduct raw water with groundwater recharge in the San Marcos Basin, and the third is the San Dieguito Reservoir, and then tying into Carlsbad desalinated water pipeline a few miles north of Encina. So just to look at those 3 in a little bit more detail, walk you through option G, which came in first with the 85 points in our system. It has 2 forms of indirect potable reuse, so groundwater augmentation in the San Dieguito Valley Basin, which Elitharp is currently studying, and then the surface water project with the San Dieguito Reservoir, which is also being studied by San Alejo, Santa Fe, and San Dieguito. And then the balance of the water would be directed to the second aqueduct for raw water augmentation to get you to the 15.7 MGD. Looking at option H, we're looking to tie into the second aqueduct along the closest alignment possible from Encina, which essentially goes up Palomar Airport Road and in proximity to the San Marcos Basin. So there's a direct opportunity there to do that groundwater recharge project as well, potentially sourced with advanced treated water from Encina. And then for the third ranked option, option F, would be potentially a first phase going to the San Dieguito Reservoir and San Dieguito Basin, just like in option G, but now instead of continuing on to the aqueduct, build the pipeline just from Encina to the Carlsbad desal water pipeline, which has available spare capacity that could potentially be used for this flow. So those are the options we're taking forward to do a more detailed cost analysis and come up with a cost of water, and that's what will be presented in the next stakeholder outreach. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ken to give a little bit more detail on the stakeholder process we're doing for this feasibility study.
Thank you, Nathan. Good evening, Mr. President and board members. As Scott said, I was at the Water Authority for a long time, like Mike Steinlicht. I'm a 25-year veteran of the Water Authority, spent most of that time as the Director of Water Resources, and was here many times. So I think I know some of you, I don't think I know all of you. I've been gone for about 1.5 years. But you know, one of the things I did is I worked with the member agencies on local supply projects. So as Director of Water Resources, we were very involved working with the member agencies on recycled water. I spent many years of my life working on the Carlsbad desalination project. And that's where I met your general manager, who was a key person in developing that project. And I'm just glad it's running and producing water. So I think what I want to talk about, and I just have a couple of slides, is the stakeholder outreach. And really, you know, again, this is where, you know, I've been around so long, I've worked with all of these agencies on how do you put together a big regional project with a lot of different stakeholders. And the diagram here is really that inner circle. I mean, what Encina is trying to do is to determine the feasibility of bringing a large amount of supply to the table, recycled water supply, and can it be reused? And Encina is, you know, you're a member agency of Encina, so you're involved on the wastewater treatment side, and you're a water agency, a water supplier, and you're involved on the water purveyor side. So you have kind of a unique perspective in this project as you're a stakeholder on both sides of this. Really what we're focused now on, we're not talking to the public, we're not going out there promoting reuse. This is really an effort to see, is it technically feasible, is it financially feasible, and, you know, maybe to put it in simplest terms, is there a deal here? And that's really where we're looking at. If there is a future project, then it moves beyond feasibility, then there's a lot more to discuss, but we're really at these early stages. I went the wrong way.
Oh, you're right.
Okay, that is good. Okay, look at this. So, you know, when we look at the project, as I said, what Encina's bringing is they're bringing land, they're bringing treated wastewater, they're bringing treatment expertise, and they're bringing economies of scale that may make a larger regional reuse project more cost effective, more affordable. And whenever you come up with a project, you know, especially when you've got multiple agencies, you've got to define roles and responsibilities, and you've got to figure all those things out. That's a big part of feasibility. So for Encina, as Scott said earlier, they're the wholesale. They're not a water purveyor. They're not going to deliver water to customers. That's really what the water agencies do. They could be the owner and operator of an advanced water treatment plant if we're doing potable reuse, or they can treat it to tertiary for non-potable reuse. That's something they can do on site. The question is, you know, who's the permit holder? You know, there is responsibilities and liabilities for being the permit holder, and you got to comply with the permit. Those are issues that we'd have to work through. And then cost recovery is, you know, and you're a member agency, they treat wastewater, and they treat it to comply with their permit conditions. So anything beyond that, that really isn't the responsibility of the wastewater customers, that would be for water supply. So they would have to recoup whatever expenses. Now, you may remember last year Senator Hertzberg floated a bill out there for zero ocean discharge. And everything we hear, you know, that's popping around up in Sacramento again. So that may be, you know, one of the reasons Encina's looking at this is, okay, if I get forced into doing that to comply with my NPDES permit, you know, what can we do with the water? Now, some of this really depends on timing and regulations and the projects you saw. You can't do everything at once because the regulations won't let you do this. But there's things that, you know, we're looking at in identifying these alternatives, defining the project, you know, if we can get loans and grants, keep the project more affordable, and work out these issues of, well, who owns the facilities, what additional facilities do we need? Because bottom line, the water purveyors, and you're one of them, are gonna wanna know what the price is. The price is gonna decide whether there's a deal here. And so that's kind of the next step in evaluating this. You know, what is the, you know, what's the cost? What's the most cost-effective options? What would Encina have to sell the recycled water at? You know, those are the issues that we want to get to, because really, as a water purveyor, you know, you're the one that's going to beneficially reuse the water. So that's, you know, we've had a discussion with, you know, your general manager and your staff. James was at a meeting with all the other North County recycled water agencies, City of San Diego, the Water Authority, to see, okay, what do we need to focus on? Do we have the right information? So those discussions are going to continue to go along. They're going to be part of reviewing the plan, and we'll see if there is something that's affordable, because bringing this resource, 20 million gallons a day of new water supply, is a real opportunity. And so we want to see how can we develop that opportunity. So I'm going to just hand it to Scott to kind of go over stuff.
This is the last slide, I swear, we're almost done. So we went through the screening process, identified our preferred alternatives. We've been going through the outreach for the last couple months. We'll be wrapping that up, and then we're going to do the detailed evaluation, and then we'll be back to present that to the stakeholder groups and to the Encina board. So Director Hernandez and Elitharp will get to see this some more in more detail. And then the hope is to wrap up the report and present it to Encina in the spring. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
A couple, Scott, can you convert the 15 million gallons a day into acre feet a year?
It's roughly 17,000.
Acre feet?
17,000 acre feet, 17.
So that's our full supply. Here, more than our full
Oh,
supply.
yeah, it's a lot of water.
Yeah, so that's a lot. And then secondly, and I don't remember who the team member was that is actually part of the group that's working on the regulations, like, who was that?
So Trussell Technology,
Yes.
Shane Trussell is part of our team. He's been helping us through and he's very involved in the development of the regulations at the state level. And we also have, I should mention, Corollo Engineers, who is also involved on that base. So we kind of got all the bases covered with all the experts on this, so.
And so these discussions, we were just at a conference and, you know, it seems to be, when are the regulations? And we heard the one, but the other is way the heck.
Well, so the latest on that is surface water augmentation rules we expect out in the next few months. They've been in development at the state. They're the direct potable reuse regs that would be raw water augmentation. There is a bill proposed by Water Reuse Association, which they'll be talking about, I'm sure, at the conference in March, that they want to set a deadline for the state, like they did on the surface water, of 2021. So they basically want to give the state 5 years to come up with raw water augmentation rules. And that's as far as the discussion's gone. That's a pretty big step right there. My sense is, from talking to everyone, that that's probably going to be, they'll set the rule, and then a project will have to be implemented and probably operating for a while before they will get to the flange to flange. So we're 5 years out on raw water. We're 10 to 15 plus years on flange to flange. That's my best guess.
Thank you. Scott, I don't know if you'll know the answer for this question, but Ken, I think it was, but maybe it was you, had said something about this would be a new water supply, all this 17,000 feet of acre feet of water.
Yes.
At this point, is it acceptable as new water, or aren't we having a little bit of struggle about if the state's going to allow us to claim recycled water as usable? Or am I confused?
No, well, you're no more confused than everybody else is with what the state is doing with the conservation as a way of life rules, and exactly where recycled water fits into that. It is a new local supply. It's a reliable supply, but I'm not sure where the state's at and how they want to count. I don't know, Glenn or.
Yeah, so indications are that the state, through the governor, wants recycled water to be treated similarly to other water supplies, meaning you'll have to conserve that as well, which seems to conflict with some of their other stated objectives, which is to minimize ocean discharge and to develop local water supplies. So the state is really confusing some of these projects and the agencies that are trying to bring projects forward, because before you invest the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars you need on some of these projects, you need to know that you're going to have a market for it.
Exactly. But the recycled water was an issue recently in claiming that we had water here at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah, so.
So now they're trying to give it
Yes.
to us and take it away.
So currently,
at the
they're
same time.
giving us full credit for the recycled water supplies, but going forward with the new long-term water use efficiency standards, they may retract that and treat recycled water similar to other potable water supplies.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Quick question. Do you happen to know the size of the San Vicente Dam? How much water does that hold?
200, about 190,000 acre feet, close to 200.
And Miramar?
Miramar's 7,000 acre feet.
70,000? 7,000?
Yeah, small reservoir,
And they're trying to get that for
30 million gallons. a
kissed
day.
by Mother Earth water.
Yeah.
And what's the size of San Diego?
400?
4,000? Oh, no, 700. Yeah, it's like 800.
700-800?
Yes.
And yet you seem to think that's gonna be large enough?
So the size project that, in the Trussell study that they identified was 4 million gallons a day that could meet the anticipated surface water augmentation rules that are gonna be coming out later this year. So it's a lot smaller reservoir than Miramar, so we couldn't do 30, but we could do 4. That's why we have a phased approach. If we did that as a first phase project under the surface water augmentation rules, then a second phase project would be to extend the pipeline to the raw water aqueduct, and that project would be 5 to 10 years later. Because there'd still be water left over. We wouldn't be able to use it all.
And you know what Trussell used as an amount of direct go into a body of water, surface body?
Well, there's
What they think it's gonna be?
there's retention time and blend ratio, and I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, it was the 10 to 1.
I'm just inquiring on the overall feasibility.
Yeah, the Badger treatment plant's a 40 MGD plant, and I think they were looking at 10% of the supply to Badger would be the recycled.
Thank you.
Kind of along the same lines as Director Martin's questions, it piqued my interest a lot on your, the option, the second best option, if I heard you correctly, that involved our potential groundwater basin here in San Marcos. Do we know the potential capacity of that basin?
There has not been a lot of work done on that. I have, I think it was Todd Engineering did a study about 10 years ago, and they identified that basin as having a potential yield of, well, I'm not sure how the big basin.
1 to 2.
Yeah, well, 4,000 to 5,000 total, and so a basin that size, like we're working on the one in Oceanside, so we estimated 1 to 2 MGD of recycled water that we could integrate into that basin if it was set up as a recovery basin where you actually mined water.
And so that would be part of one piece of a bigger pie, then? It wouldn't just go with the San Marcos
So
option?
that isn't big enough to justify building a pipeline from Encina all the way out here, but if we had a project, the second option was to build a pipeline out to the raw water aqueduct, and we're going right by your basin, then it's a T and a pipe to connect. Actually, James identified an existing pipe you already have that you're not using that we could connect to that would potentially make that a less expensive project. So, in order for that project to be feasible, we have to look at the bigger one. If the bigger doesn't work, then, I mean, if the San Marcos Basin, there's a lot involved in developing that basin. So if that didn't work, then you just send it all to the aqueduct. But again, we're trying to maximize the use within the service area first.
Well, I'm sorry, not quite done yet. So as we go through this, and it looks like you're gonna have some additional meetings this winter, I'll definitely have more questions at that time, but I did want to say it was, really appreciated the presentation. It's fascinating information. And I just want to applaud everybody involved for being both proactive and really thinking big. And I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Great, well, thank you, and I'm very glad that General Manager Steinlicht wanted to do the study.
We just heard from Blackie Beach on Monday and talking about groundwater and that groundwater basin. And that's a $1.5 million price tag just to find out if we have it. Where's the assumption coming that we do?
We have, I guess, we're at a very high level at this look. So our analysis will look at the cost to get the advanced treated water to the basin, and whatever that cost is, and then if that wholesale price is low enough where it makes sense to do further investigation, then that would be part of the next step. So right now, we're trying to see, is it feasible to even bring the water out here, and then what do you do with it when you get it here? There's a lot more work to be done before a project would actually happen.
Thank you.
Well, the timing on this is just perfect, because as Director Martin said, Monday we had our own study presented, and opportunities that we, Vallecitos, could take to capture our extra water. So with this additional information, I think we're going to have even more information as to whether we do this locally or, as you said, combined with the other agency to do a regional project. So I really appreciate the effort and the detail with which you brought this to us. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you, and just in the 4 years I've been on this board, I have been nothing but impressed with Encina and the progressive, proactive approach they've taken to a lot of issues. It's really exciting to see you not only looking forward, but doing it in such a detailed manner and cautiously putting, each step where it should be. Mike, it looks like you're doing an amazing job in your first year, and thank you, board members who are advising them how much Vallecitos wants to be maybe the first option. I go for regional, though. I think that will help us a lot. So if you want to spend what was it, $1.5 million to find out if we have a ground basin, that would be great. Go for it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank everybody as well for taking the time to come out tonight. It's surely appreciated.
Pleasure, happy to come out anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we'll continue, thank you, Mr. President, Directors. We'll continue to focus on trying to have a plan of action for water reuse, be an advocate for Vallecitos and the rest of our member agencies as we move forward. And now, if we can, we'll go into the next presentation, which is, let's see. Which one?
Top center.
Top center, right there? I can't see, I'm blind. All right.
Slideshow.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so we don't normally do this until May, June. We come visit you at the end of the budget, but General Manager Pruitt asked us to come a little early, so we burned the midnight oil, and I think we're pretty close on the numbers. And with me, I brought my budget czar, who we poached from the private sector to come in here. He's a CPA, Mr. Joe Spence, an analyst. And I also brought my capital project manager, James Kearns, to provide you a little background on the capital improvement program that we have. And I will follow up afterwards with any questions you may have. And don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions. We like that.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, Mr. President and Directors. Today I'll be presenting an overview of Encina's budget for 2018, and just hope to shed some light on what we believe we will be proposing to our member agencies. So to get started, let me take you through our budget process or our schedule here. We're currently working with a working draft of our budget, and we're still ironing out some of the details. A final draft will be presented to our member agencies in early April at a workshop meeting, and at that point we invite our member agency members to ask questions from our directors and managers if they have any concerns or questions at that point. And then we present the proposed budget to our Policy and Finance Committee, our Capital Improvement Committee, and our Board and Joint Advisory Committee in August. The member agencies are given May and June to work through that proposed budget, and then we hope to present the final approved the resolution and the proposed budget to the Policy and Finance Committee and our Board of Directors in July, which will approve the appropriations resolution and ultimately set the budget on course. So, like Mike said, we're a little early in the game. What we have for you today is a working draft of the budget, and final results may vary. Here we have a summary of both operating and capital budget. We present you with the fiscal year 2016 actual figures, 2017 budget that was approved, and the 2018 proposed budget. The operating budget is showing a 2.8% increase, and to give you some context, most of operating is personnel related. So this increase is driven from our labor relations resolution. Other cost increase on the operating side have been negated by operating efficiencies and energy savings we have. We recently have been working on our aeration basin, and we're capturing a lot of energy, natural gas and electricity savings from that project. Our capital budget has a 4.8% increase from the prior year, and this will fluctuate each year based on the cash demand of the the projects that are being performed each year. So to take a quick look at our operating expenses before we jump into the capital program, I'd mentioned the operating program is showing a 2.8% increase, and that's pretty consistent with our history, where personnel is a driving factor. Sometimes electricity, chemical, or hauling costs will drive that trend up a little bit. In the early 90s, we completed the Phase 4 project, which brought additional capacity and energy emissions in our secondaries. In 2009, our Phase 5 was completed, which brought on our heat dryer and rehab to our cogen engines, which gave us significant energy savings and hauling savings, which is why we see that trend falling back. So to take a look at our capital program. Our capital program is broken down into three main categories. Capital improvement projects, which are the large multi-year projects, typically 50,000 or more, much larger than that usually. We also have planned asset replacement, which captures projects typically $20,000 or larger. These are usually completed in 1 year. They add some useful life to the asset, or they, well, primarily to extend the useful life of our assets. Capital, yeah.
Can you explain ECAMP?
So Jimmy will be discussing our ECAMP. It's a comprehensive asset management study program that looks at our assets and...
Tell me again, what is it, the initial stand for?
Encina Comprehensive Asset Management.
Thank you.
And that looks at, where Encina needs to be going over the next 5 or 6 years. And that dictates what capital projects, what major projects we need to be putting on course today and next year. Capital acquisitions and minor rehab are assets, typically assets that need to be purchased for a lab or smaller items that are maybe $5,000 or larger, or minor rehab assets that may add some useful life to our assets. Let me introduce Jimmy Kearns, our project manager, who will be discussing our projects and what we plan on doing over the next few years. And then I'll come back and discuss how our budget ultimately rolls out to Vallecitos.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening, Mr. President, directors. I want to give you some historical perspective. The graph shown here shows the level of investment at the Encina treatment plant beginning in 1980. You will notice spikes in the level of investment approximately every 10 years, beginning in the early 80s with the Phase 3 expansion project, followed by the Phase 4 expansion project in the 90s, and more recently the Phase 5 expansion project that was completed in 2009. During the Phase 5 planning period, it was predicted that a future solids capacity related project would be required approximately 10 years after the Phase 5 project was brought online. So that puts us right in line 2019, pretty much where we're at now. Looking forward, the draft budget presented here is based, particularly the outlying years, is based on what we know today. So there are several updates to some key guidance documents that staff is currently working on that have the potential to change this 6-year and beyond capital budget outlook. Staff is working to update the Energy Emissions Strategic Plan, last updated in 2011, the Biosolids Management Plan completed in 2008. These updates are being consolidated into one request for proposals that staff expects to have on the street in March. The recommendations from these updates will then feed into the 2019 budget. Another important step is to update the Encina Comprehensive Asset Management Plan, and this is the ECAMP. This was last updated in 2016. In November 2016, EWA completed a process master plan. This plan identified 11 projects that are recommended for implementation. 5 of these projects are related to maintaining capacity, and 6 are related to efficiency. The majority of the capacity-related improvement projects and some of the lower priority efficiency projects are already identified in the most recent ECAMP that was last updated in 2016. Those projects that are not currently identified in the ECAMP are going to be incorporated in this year's ECAMP update. So this makes this a very crucial update to the plan. And the update of these three documents will really solidify the path forward for the 6 years and even further out. Shown here by process area is the anticipated level of investment, approximately 90 million for the 6-year planning horizon beginning in fiscal year 2018. There's significant investment in the primary area. The primary area was largely constructed in the early 80s during the Phase 3 expansion project and has had no real significant capital investment since that time. Moving left to right, we have the digestion. That's the next area of significant investment. EWA has 3 digesters, one of which was constructed in the Phase 3, 1982. The other 2 were in the early 90s during the Phase 4 project. Condition assessments have shown these tanks to be, the concrete structures to be in pretty good condition. There is some coating failures on the internal steel components and coatings, the dome. So a rehab is essential, and that's where it's driving that up. Also, the digester mixing systems, the pump mix system and the gas mix system are reaching the end of their useful life. Moving out further, we have the biosolids and significant investment there. And this is capacity related again, as I previously mentioned. And the process master plan has confirmed that based on our current conditions, the heat dryer is nearing capacity. This is an area where the energy and emissions strategic plan and the biosolids management plan will come together, and there's a definite nexus between them. And that is going to really, hopefully, address the solids capacity issues that we see there. The 10.9 for energy, this is tied up in routine maintenance of the engines, improvements to our fats, oil, and grease receiving facility, improvements to our installation of gas conditioning, engine catalyst, and some other general improvements based around the cogen facility. And then we have the general plant, and that number that you see there is really tied up a lot in our supervisory control and data acquisition, our SCADA system. That's basically what we use to control the treatment plant. That project is currently in design, and we expect to move into construction or implementation of that project over the next few years. And that again is driven by obsolescence of a lot of the hardware that's in place throughout the field, and the fact that the SCADA system has been expanded upon over the years during all the different expansion projects, and it's kind of a hodgepodge thrown together. So this level of investment is significant but very necessary.
You had a question?
Yeah, if you go back, biosolids, my curiosity, a few years ago, we were very high, or a lot of us were very high on the fertilizer. Is that within the biosolids field?
Yes, we currently have our heat drying facility, and we generate a Class A biosolid that is a fertilizer.
Are we doing anything with that now? Are we
yes.
seeing a payback from it? Or is it still just an investment?
I think it's, Mike could speak to that.
There is no payback for that. There's offset of costs if we can reduce our hauling. We used to be around $2 billion hauling back in 2007 a year.
Right.
Now we're around 300,000 in hauling. So we do see a tremendous decrease in our operating, but it was a huge capital investment. We're not making money on it. It's an investment.
Okay, great, thank you.
Shown here by process area again is the same 90 million investment over the 6 years. By year of implementation. Also added is the depreciation value for each process area. This confirms to us basically the 73, the higher the number in the depreciated value, the closer the area is or the assets are to the end of their useful life. So this confirms to us seeing the 73% depreciated value on the liquid side. That's really driven by the primaries, and again, that goes back to the level of investment that we've had over the years in that Phase 3 area. So, we'll move on. This is an overall summary of the fiscal year 2018 budget. It's 10 million. Largely, again, 3.1 million in the primaries, again, the phase 3 area. Energy, and this will be improvements to our fog system, routine maintenance on the engines, and general plant. This is our SCADA project, which is currently in design. So I have some additional slides that kind of delves down deeper into the fiscal year 18 budget, project by project. I would be happy to go through, or if you feel this is enough detail.
This year here at Vallecitos, we looked at, through the Finance Committee, a look at a flattening, a more conservative look at our capital improvements. How, I'm sure it's not liberal, but I mean, is on a 1 to 10, are you guys at a 7? Are you thinking, yeah, man, we better get all this done in the next, I mean, 18 to 18? What's your level of, I guess, feeling of aggressiveness or conservative approach to your capital outlay?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. We look to maximize useful life of all of our assets. So we go out to the field. We depend a lot on staff, depend on a lot of consultants to come and let us know, are we sweating these assets? Are they at the end of their useful life? So what you see every 5 years coming out of Encina is our best professional judgment led by science and mathematics. The second dryer that you see on there right now is based on mathematics. What comes down the pipe from a solid standpoint, we have to process those solids. So when we put a big number in there, it's basically, we don't want to provide sticker shock in the budget year. We want to say 5 years out, here's a big cost that we think may be coming, but we're going to reassess each year. So right now, what we're doing, what Mr. Kearns had said earlier, is that we're doing a couple studies that's going to set the pace for Encina for the next 20 years, and that's that energy emissions and the biosolids strategic plan. That's going to tell us whether or not we need that second heat dryer, or is there better technology? We're going to look at all conditions, all new technologies, and we're going to find out what's the best approach that provides value to our ratepayers, and we always sweat our assets out. We want to make sure we maximize useful life. So what you saw last year was our best professional judgment. Last year, you'll show that we pushed it out another year. And the reason why we do that is we feel that we can put in operational efficiencies from our centrifuges going from 22% cake to 24% cake, and actually push off the dryer back until 2021, or the new technology. So we're looking at that right now.
Very good. Thank you.
So I would be happy to spend a little more time on discussing these projects.
I'll leave it to.
Or I can turn it back to Joe.
Well, Director Hernandez and I get to see all these projects, but I'll leave it to the others.
Yeah,
if they want to
I'll
see
pass
more
on that
detail.
too.
I think
Maybe you can answer something before we go on Encina. Have we retained ownership of that property, or have they,
The
made a
20
parking
acres?
lot out of it?
the south parcel.
South parcel?
Yeah.
Yeah, we own that.
The south parcel, you still have ownership and control?
We still own that. We still own, maintain control. We established, the board of directors in November, established a framework, 4 concepts for monetizing the south parcel, maybe to generate revenue. And we're looking right now, I've got an active participant right now that I'll probably bring to the board in February, potentially for revenue generating on that south parcel.
Do you think with the advent, depending on which consultant you speak to, and I've noticed that from all the things we go to, they all have different timeframes on indirect, direct, that property is going to be needed by Encina in the possibly near future?
We have, not in the near future, but that will probably be needed in the future, for sure, for water reuse and potentially flow equalization. We have a recapture area slated for big, large tanks, so we don't have to increase the size of our outfall, which is extremely expensive. So that's there as well. But in the meantime, we want to see if we can generate some revenue off that land and reduce.
Circus Vargas?
That's it. Yeah. Are they still in business?
Yeah, once a year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mike, but all that would change in a heartbeat if something like that Tershberg bill happened and they closed off our pipe.
That is correct. By 2030, I think was the original, where we actually had to reuse 50% of our water for recycle. If that happens, we will be, that's out of this plan, the water reuse plan, where we would actually pull it off the shelf and say, let's go, and this is what we're gonna do. So it gives you cover, our policymakers cover.
Thank you, Mike.
So if we're choosing not to delve deeper, I will turn it back over to Joe for the summary.
Amen.
Thank you.
So then, just looking back at our budget for 2018, this is a summary of our capital budget broken down by each of our major programs. There's a salaries component, which includes a labor relations adjustment. And then ultimately, we get to this summary, which shows how the 2018 budget may be allocated across the member agencies.
Joe, we have a question.
Joe, just real quick, how many employees does Encina have?
68 full-time.
Okay, how many part-time?
I believe we have 2 operators that are temporary, and then we have a couple admin that were, minor hours, 20
Thank you. Thank you.
So the capital costs are billed out to the member agencies based on their ownership of each project. Vallecitos owns, well, for most of Encina, we refer to the Unit I ownership rate. Vallecitos owns 22% of that Unit I. Some assets may be billed out to Vallecitos based on that rate. There's also outfall assets, which are built on our Unit J ownership rate. Vallecitos owns 24% of the Unit J assets. And then there's also remote facilities, which Vallecitos doesn't carry any. And then there's assets which may benefit specific member agencies, like meters or certain pipes. So we make sure to bill that only to that particular member agency that benefits from that asset.
The percentage of change?
Yeah.
Why would that differ between the different agencies?
So City of Carlsbad, Vista, and Buena all have remote facilities. So with capital acquisitions being carried out at some of those remote sites, we'll see larger fluctuations with those guys. Because the Unit I ownership rate is a little bit different than our outfall ownership rate, we see Vallecitos, Leucadia, and Encinitas vary between that 5.1 and 5.2%.
Does EWA operate any of the other facilities?
What's that?
Does EWA operate any of those other facilities?
Yeah, we completely operate the Carlsbad Water Recycling Facility, and then we operate a few other remote sites with less man hours.
We have 4 pumps.
Thank you.
That concludes the summary of our 2018 budget.
So as a last thing, I just want to share with you that our capital investment is following our depreciation, where assets are almost fully depreciated. We haven't invested in those for quite some time. In addition, we're outsourcing our capital for this year and on. We're going to outsource our program management for CIP support. We had a director of engineering. We no longer have that position. We're going to push that down, make that into asset management focused. As Joe stated as well in his graph, our operating expense, our audited operating expense for 2016 is below that of fiscal year 2009. And Director Snell, you asked how many employees we have. We had 67 employees in 1997. So we maintained relatively flat. We are looking at, we did incorporate a volunteer temporary part-time program last year, and it seems to be working out good. But it is hard to find certified operators. Like the young man who just got his grade 4, those guys are hard to find. And so I'm going to poach him from you, Glenn.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
But if you want a deeper dive analysis and get some feel on some of the activities that we have going on in Encina, I invite you to visit us and take a tour of our cogeneration. We have a 3-megawatt cogeneration facility. You've been there, Director Martin, but I don't think Director Snell, you've been there yet. We could show you the heat dryer. We could show you where some of these CIP activities are going on, and you can actually get hands-on and look at what we're doing at Encina. So with that, I thank you. I thank you for your kind words, Director Evans, and if you have any questions, we have to answer.
Great job, thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.
Thorough,
Thorough
very
presentation.
thorough.
Always enjoyed coming here. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank Mike and his team. It was really informative, very helpful, and I'll stay in touch with EWA through the process to make sure I represent Vallecitos' interests as we go through their budgeting process and incorporate it into our budgeting process.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a short recess, about 5 minutes.
Good night.
We'll get started again. We're at the point in the agenda for public comment. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. A request to speak form is required to be submitted to the executive secretary prior to the start of the meeting if possible. Public comment should start by stating name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into a dialogue with the speaker. I have one request to speak for this portion of the agenda, and that's Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. I had discussed a number of miscellaneous items that I would like to point up again. I think one of the problems we have is how much wastewater treatment we have. The recent meeting we had with the Finance Committee and the juggling that Rob had to do with the wastewater under the last rain was disconcerting. The question is, and from what I took away from that meeting, was that we need more wastewater treatment now. And there is considerable discrepancy between what Escondido is saying it has to pay for extra capacity and what was presented in the meeting. There's also a question of whether or not you can follow through with your promise that new development will pay all of the new facility fees. Your deferred fee payment plan opens up a huge gap between what developers have to pay and what the public will have to pay to provide their facilities. I also think we need more public ability to participate. It was a very long meeting with the finance group, but there was a lot of material of relevance that was in it. And this is part of the rate-paying process. It should be more available to the public during times at which they can attend. One of the other issues I have is your biggest problem, which was alluded to in today's presentation, is the biomass, how much waste, solid waste there is. When you conserve water, you have much more concentrated waste. Humans still produce about the same waste whether there's water conservation or not. And the cost and viability of these options during a period of high conservation can be substantially higher or the production much less than promised. I also mentioned in the last oral comment period during one of these meetings that the Oroville Dam, if that failed, would present a catastrophe potentially to us. And I think that does need to be addressed if there is a problem with the dam. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requested a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. I have one request to speak on item 1.1, so I'll consider that item pulled. Are there any others?
1.3?
1.3. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the rest of the.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items 1.1 and 1.3. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, consent calendar item 1.1. Mr. Hunsaker.
Since there was two very long meetings of great import, I decided to check the video archives for what I had said and what others had said during those meetings. And what I found, even as late as last night, that for up to about 5 weeks, a lot of the archive and video and audio has been, quote, pending. I've been informed that there was an issue of whether or not there was a problem of synchronization of the audio with the video. And I was wondering how much longer it would take to get this fixed. And I noticed I had some potential discrepancies that I wanted to discuss about the minutes, but I had no means of double checking exactly what I said. I mentioned, for example, about the Oral Dam, the sewer capacity issue, and the question of having one tier for ag when you have a potential for a total exemption from all conservation for marijuana growth, which would be a disaster for us. And I would like to have these minutes carried through until the videos and the audio are available on the public website.
Okay, could we maybe address that? And
I'm not sure, I'm not aware of the issue, but maybe Diane can help us.
Well, the issue is the minutes are not posted on the website until they're actually approved by the board. They're not, we can't put them out there until they're approved.
Right.
So the minutes in draft form until they're approved are in the board agenda packet for the current meeting. Once they're approved at the meeting, then they're posted on the website.
Well, can you address the issue, Mr. Hunsaker mentioned something about the video not being available online?
The video is posted online and it is posted following the board meeting. So if there's a particular line that you weren't able to view, then let me know and I'll check with IT. It is linked up following the board meeting.
Yeah, I'm on the website right now, and all video is available through 2/1/17. The only ones that are not is the last meeting that we had and the workshop. No, I take that back. Oh, yeah, no, it's the workshop, yeah, the workshop, not, yeah. So it's fairly current.
Wasn't last night.
Move to approve.
Second.
been moved and seconded to approve consent calendar item 1.1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, item 1.3.
1.3, it's relatively small, and I apologize. 1.3, page 15, item 1.1, second paragraph. And I blame this due to my mumbling. It says Director Martin stated he received a donation in the form of a check from Rachel Coronado. And that's supposed to be Rancho Coronado, which would be a major difference, or Brookfield for his election campaign. And the rest is correct. I asked Council Scott, and he said I did not have to recuse myself, so that's correct. But I just wanted to change it from Rachel to Rancho, so they knew it was actually from the applicant, rather than the applicant's stepdaughter. But that's my fault for mumbling, so I apologize. With that, I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve consent calendar item 1.3. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. All right, on to action item 2.1, rescinding drought level 1. Chris.
Good evening, President Elitharp, board members. So back in August of 2014, we were in a level 2 drought.
In July of 2016, we reduced to a level 1 drought. And on January 26th, just a couple weeks ago, San Diego County Water Authority declared the drought over in San Diego County. So neither the Water Authority nor Vallecitos Water District at this point are experiencing any supply shortages from drought. The region has invested about $3.5 billion over the past 3 decades to increase supply reliability, upgrading conveyance systems, desalinization, and as you all know, we have a direct connect to the desal plant over in Carlsbad. We met our savings goals during the drought period when we had those mandatory reductions. We met those goals, and then when the state shifted over to that supply methodology based on 3 years more of drought, there was no need for us to have any demand reductions from our customers. January 2017, huge blizzards up and down the state, atmospheric river storms, locally lots of rain, and my note here is February 1st, the Sierra snowpack was 177% of average, and there's more storms on the way, and we're all looking for more good precipitation, snow, hopefully. The restrictions remain in place at all times, so no irrigating in the middle of the day, no running your hose when you're washing your car. You still need to ask for water in restaurants, and we will be reaching out to our customers. Alicia Saavedra pointed out to me the bill message that as soon as we take some action, we can update the bill messages. I've reached out to Coast News. We have press releases prepared, Twitter and Facebook posts ready to go. Should at the board's plan, we rescind the drought this evening.
Director Hernandez.
But we are still under the 20 by 20, a 20% reduction by 2020.
Correct, and our target goal, I was looking at it just today, target goal for 2020 is I think 159 GPCD, and I believe our 2015 total was more like 117. I can look at the 2016 one, but we've just been way under so far. And we have those new restrictions I talked about at the last board meeting that are coming down from the state. Not clear exactly what they are yet, but when that comes out and we all know it, I'll bring a report forward to the board on that.
If I could maybe add on to what Chris said, at a recent general managers meeting at the Water Authority, I did do an informal poll to see what other agencies are thinking of doing. There's a few that are thinking of taking themselves out of level 1. There's a few that aren't sure what they're going to do yet. They're waiting to see how things progress. And I'd say over half are probably going to leave themselves in the current situation they're in, which is typically a level 1. Their thought process is that, hey, it's voluntary anyway, so why take us out of something that's only voluntary? But so that's not binding on us certainly, but I just want to give you a feel for what some of the other agencies are thinking.
Thank you. Director Murray.
Chris, when's the next edition of Splash due out?
So part of the reason why I've been holding off on the Splash is for this exact purpose. The other thing too is we're looking to redesign it and maybe retitle it.
So the question still is there. When's the next one due to go out?
So we'll probably bring you a draft at the board meeting on the 1st of March for the board to review. Look at the design, but also include the information on if we rescind drought.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Director Smith.
Chris, thanks for the kind of talking a little bit about what the public outreach plan is and what your team's going to do. If the rest of the board agrees, I would like to use, at least for the headline, similar language that the San Diego County Water Authority used. And I'd like to, something to the extent of that we declare the end of the drought in Vallecitos, and the drought, we declare the drought over in Vallecitos. Really mirror that language, because I liked how the Water Authority messaged that.
I think that's what I put as the title of the press release. The press release is already prepared. I reached out to President Elitharp earlier today make sure he was happy with the quote. General Manager Pruitt has approved the press release, so it's queued up and ready to go, but I think I did exactly that same thing that the board declares drought over in Vallecitos service area, but if not, I'll switch it that way.
I would support making it match as closely as possible to the water authority. I think it's a great message.
I'm sorry, that was a press release you're talking about?
Yes.
They're talking about splash, you're talking about a press release?
I'm talking about both.
All of the above.
So, yes, splash will go out, but also a press release. But also, I think I briefly mentioned, Alicia, customer service supervisor, reminded me, hey, we got a bill message right on the bill, and we can change that when we're ready. So she and I
the
are.
social media piece as well.
Oh, yeah, both.
And we are anticipating that the media may be reaching out to us. If the board takes the action tonight to rescind the drought level, it's likely that we'll be contacted by television, radio, newspaper, print to say.
I'm hopeful. I'm not sure it's as exciting as our drought patrols, and I did remind General Manager Puim, just so in case he wanted to put on the right suit for tomorrow. But if there's a bad traffic accident, it won't get picked up. We'll just, especially by the news stations, television.
Well, I hope that we're caveating in that press release of the new restrictions.
Absolutely.
That are brand new to people that they don't know, and tell them those are in effect.
Absolutely.
Those are now a constant.
Yes.
Because otherwise, they're gonna go back to washing down their driveways.
Nope.
And they won't, well, they said it's over, we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Nope, it's definitely included in
Yeah,
the
I
press
think it's
release.
important to keep up the pressure on those kind of, makes sense to do kind of things that we should always be doing.
So true.
Richard Snow.
Yeah, I move that we rescind drought level 1 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Chris. 2.2.
So back on February 1st, the board did hear an update on where we're at in the rate study, and Mr. Scaglione is going to provide a further update as things progress. It's moving along pretty well. We just want to make sure we're keeping the board informed of the progress. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Scaglione.
Thank you, General Manager Pruitt. Get this going first. This is the end, but it's not going to be that fast. Let me get to the beginning here.
Great report.
Yeah, just the way you like it. Mr. President, members of the board, last time we met on February 1st, we had a presentation on water rate structure considerations and had the consensus to go forward with an internal rate study. Today, what you have before you is some progress that we've made in developing the rate structure. And the numbers, had to put some numbers in it. There are numbers that were used projection from the last budget we did. So this isn't our current budgeted numbers, but need to put them in to kind of check the methodologies and things as we go forward. So, and the projections of cost is just a projection. We don't know what the 2018 water costs are going to be yet. But projections are in there so we can assess the progress that we're making. There will be two spots in the presentation where I'll kind of stop and get consensus to make sure staff is in the right direction as we progress along. So going forward over here, it's just something you saw before, but just to put it out there again, this was rates that are recoverable from or costs that are recoverable from our user fees that we looked at for water, and just looking how big the supply cost is. So that's the focus of the study as we go forward. That's the only reason why I have that here, just as a reminder. Not only is the supply cost big, but there's also the cost varies, because now we have three sources. One of the first things we do for the cost of service study is the demand projection. And with this graph is the blue line is the number of meters we have. So this graph shows 10 years of actual towards the left, and then 5 years of projection on the right of the graph. And you can see growth is pretty steady and not very big. It's a fraction of a % each year. We do have quite a few meters. The thing that really varies is behavior. So that red line is both growth and the way customers behave, how much water they use per meter. So that's the variability. So going forward, what we've looked back at past trends, about 3% is what we've assumed, 0.3% is from growth, and 2.7% is from what you call bounce back after a cutback like that, and from the mandates, usage just bounces back at least a little bit. This was a table to produce that projection. We lost a lot of ag meters, so we don't expect ag to come back. And so conservatively, we assume that ag is going to be flat. There was a spike up in construction water. We'll assume that go down a little bit and stay pretty steady. And then the other assumptions, like I said, just by looking back at the trends, that's where they came from, those assumptions. This is one you saw before too, but I'll just introduce it to you again. There are 3 different levels of water. Now we can separate and distinct. We have OMWD water, we have San Diego County Water Authority water, and we have the desal water that's all priced differently. This changed a little bit from what you saw before because now this accounts for, if you see the little footnote below, unbilled water is rolled into this to come up with the cost. Again, a projection of cost. And then with the OMWD water, the cheap water, we actually had 4,060 feet of production last year, and checking with our operators and checking with OMWD operators, they anticipate that will not go down, and if anything, that'll go higher. So conservatively, we just assume that's going to be the same amount.
Director Meyer.
Unbilled water.
Yes.
That wasn't taken into account last time? We didn't have it last time? and
No, we
have it
have.
this
Just for the presentation, I was just showing you the contractual amounts.
time? And unbilled water is shrinkage, leaks, fire hydrants?
Is the
What's
water that we
unbilled
use in this building, operational water, like for flushing cul-de-sacs and for water flushing, if somebody hits a fire hydrant, fire protection and testing as well, and on use, so, and leaks and such, yeah. 5.6% is the estimate that we're using for budget and for this projection as well.
But we don't have a water meter on this building?
We do.
Okay.
It's
We're not-
metered, but
we're
not billed. We
we're
don't
not
bill
billing
ourselves, yeah.
What the
So
heck?
a lot of this unbilled water is actually metered. We know what it is, but we're just not, billing ourselves. Yeah.
5.6% of our overall water cost is quite a large number.
Yes, it's about 840 acre feet of water, and 5.6 is about a 3-year average.
Well, if our yearly is $22 million, 5% of that's $1 million. So we lose $1 million a year in shrinkage.
Shrinkage is a very small part of that. Again, it's
Well,
operational use, it's the
call it
use for
whatever.
the building.
Well, this building can't add up to be that much.
No, but I'm just saying as an
It's not $1
example.
million a year.
Yeah. Water loss is what you're referring to, and it's a component of that 5.6, but not all of it.
Well, I'm sorry. Explain to me what it's not all of. It's shrinkage, it's loss, whether it goes through a fire hydrant, whether it goes through a broken pipe, whether it goes into Lake San Marcos. It's a loss.
Correct. Water loss is a component of unbilled water.
So it's shrinkage.
Mhm.
Same as you would use in a retail business.
Yeah.
The customer walked out with it, or you threw it out accidentally, shrinkage.
Right.
That's $1 million a year we have in shrinkage on water.
Again, it's a component, so yes, unbilled water is 5.6%. A component of that is water loss. That's correct.
Unbilled, including this building.
Director Smith.
How's that measured, Tom? I mean, how do you come up with that number? I mean, how do you track water loss?
Each month we have a spreadsheet that we do. So water loss is your production minus your sales, and then a change in storage factor in that. So there's timing differences, so you see it go like this.
Yeah.
And so you really, at the end of the year, you kind of get a better idea of what it was for the whole year. Month to month, it goes like that, changes in storage. And timing of billing too, so you kind of have to wait for a whole year to get a meaningful number.
I know this is getting us off a little track a little bit, but I've used the facilities here. at the district, and I don't think that we've implemented, water, as great of water efficiencies that we could with the sinks and toilets here. Have we ever, and I'm asking because I'm new, have we ever looked at that ROI with regards to reducing our impact to that lost unbillable water compared to what it would cost to upgrade our facilities, not only from an ROI standpoint, but also kind of the lead by example standpoint?
Yeah. And we have switched to the automated, not all of them, we could change some more, but the automated sinks, what goes on and things like that. I'm not sure of operationally if we've done anything else in the building recently, but we've done that.
Something, and I don't want to get us on sidetracked, but that might be something improvement that we may want to look at least. Again, it's more of a lead by example than anything else, but if there is a ROI proposition there, then look at it.
Yeah, and I'm just curious why, on an accounting basis, why don't we bill ourselves? I mean, it's a cost of operation, so shouldn't that be
It's a revenue requirement,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
it is rolled into the revenue requirement.
Yeah, I think most organizations actually do that.
And we do, I don't have it here for you to present, but we do keep track of flushing water. We keep track of all the water that's kind of rolled into that 5.6. Can't narrow it down exactly for the unmetered part, but we do keep track of it, and we read meters even if it's not billed, we still read the meter every month, so we can keep track of unbilled.
Well, it's not just this location, we have Meadowlark. Right. And we have our unmetered Grove, I assume, that you never really metered that either.
It's metered, yes, we meter it, but it's
never read the
unbilled.
meter.
We don't bill ourselves.
You never read the meter. I'm curious how in the profit and loss then,
No,
you showed how much we were losing.
Yeah, we do read the meter. So some of the reports that we've given you over the years have shown water use, and we do read them. Yeah, there's quite a few meters that we read, but we don't, our own meters, but we don't bill. Yeah.
So on the categories, I mean, the efficiency, there's only so many things that we have control over. Knocking over a fire hydrant or testing the fire system, or if a fire occurs, we have no control over that. Can you break out what portion of that 5% are those items versus the rest? Is it a...
We could come back with that. I'm not prepared today, but
Yeah,
we keep track of
I would
every
be
time we
interested in
flush.
knowing that.
Yeah, every time we have a flushing of the system,
Right.
we make an estimate of what that water is.
Yeah.
We had, there is contractually when a fire department uses water, we don't bill.
Right.
But they're supposed to provide us with estimates. I don't think that's being done, but we'll look into that.
Okay,
too.
all
Yeah.
right.
I'll try to break that down for you a little bit better.
It'll be a big approximation, because some of those numbers, we just don't have real
Yeah.
accurate numbers.
Yeah,
Some we
right.
do, some we don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
a small part of it we can nail down.
And I could be wrong, but I thought I asked, because it goes hand in hand with water loss. I thought I asked for a report showing of all the hydrants that we've had knocked over. And we've sent our staff out to replace, and the fire department, but there's a cost to us for that. And I thought I asked for our cost recovery ratio. What are we actually recovering from, we should be recovering something.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I'll definitely look
Are
into
we
that.
still
and get
working on that?
Yeah.
We do have some preliminary information, it just hasn't made its way back to the board yet. So, John, I don't know if you remember the numbers. Yeah, well, go ahead, do you want to hear them, would you like to hear them now?
And the reason why we're getting ready, it's just fascinating because it's $1 million, right? Which is, in the grand scheme of things, may not be a lot for a water district of our size, but it is a significant number. And as we go through this rate structure and potentially rate increases in the future, and we're looking at ways, me in particular, looking at ways to cut, if we can find ways to cut our water losses and be able to kind of reduce some of that overall expense, that means that's less we have to cut in other areas. And so I see this as an opportunity. I'm not quite sure yet, just having learned about this, formulating in my head how we could maybe realize that opportunity, but I think there's an opportunity there. So that's why I got so kind of jumped out of my chair a little bit, and so.
So Director Martin?
Thank you.
I did the research on your hip fire hydrants and other.
Wes,
Thank
could
you
you
very
please use the mic?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and when we get new mics, we may not all be able to hear.
So the results are, there were 23 hit fire hydrants or other instances. We billed $55,000 and we collected $31,000. So we still have invoices for $23,000 outstanding, but it's been billed.
Well, the outstanding invoices, the likelihood of those being paid?
We've only written off $1,100 to give you an idea. So the ones that we bill, we usually collect.
Very good.
Now, the question there would probably be how many what happened that weren't billed? And that's a good question.
Right.
I don't have the data on that for you because a lot of stuff could have happened and wouldn't, I might be able to get it. Let me look into that.
And do we request at the same time, as we're out there replacing the hydrant, do we request the fireman's estimate of how much water was blown off so that that could be also added to the insurance bill?
I don't think they can charge for that.
Typically what happens, we have a fire hydrant hit, usually one of our pressure stations, we'll see a spike, we'll see that change. So our SCADA system records that immediately, and then we know what time our staff got out there to shut it off. So we have a, pretty much within a minute time how long it was flowing. And then we actually have a chart, it's an engineering chart that tells us it's this size pipe, the pressure in that area, and that gives us a flow, and then we just multiply it. So then we know how many gallons estimated within, probably a few thousand what was lost.
Okay.
And so
that's
then
what we
that
do.
goes into the billing as well.
Oh, okay.
But the hit and runs, you're correct,
Yeah,
we still send that data to finance, let them know we lost this much water.
Right.
Just Slater's 50/50 last weekend, they ran over a fire hydrant, it was a hit and run. So someone probably too much ran it over, and it was actually our line running in there, so it was our hydrant.
Well, so while you're up here, then obviously $55,000 or $60,000 out of $1 million is not a big loss, but it's a piece of a loss. What are our largest losses? Where are they being incurred? Where the water's disappearing?
Well, mainline breaks, it's definitely unmetered and unbilled because, again, we're not billing ourselves.
Right.
So that's probably the greatest loss. We actually are in the process, and the entire state for the larger water agencies, we're required through SB 555 to do a water audit annually, and then have a third party audit that audit and confirm it. So actually there's 4 members on that team, myself, Rob Scholl, Mike Arthur is on it, as well as Chris Robbins. And we actually have a third workshop February 28th here. We're actually hosting it, so we don't have to pay anything, but 28th and the 1st, and that's part 3 of 4 to go through this process. And we've actually found, going through it, that actually our water loss and our unbilled, unmetered is relatively low compared to most agencies. So it seems like a lot to us, but we're actually pretty efficient.
So 5% or roughly $1 million a year is
The average
efficient?
water unbilled, we used to call it unaccounted for water, unbilled water. The average in the United States is 5 to 10%. And our actual water loss, from Mike, do you remember, it was like 3 something?
Yeah, the water, probably a little under 3, 2.9 to 3.1,
Yeah,
somewhere around
so
there.
the actual water loss, where we're losing it from mainline breaks or fire hydrants, it's like that, is around 2.9% out of that 5 something.
Okay, so what, between that 3%, 3.2%, and 5.4%?
That's water that typically we're using, but it's not just like this facility. We have water main flushing for water quality reasons. When we do a contractor does a tie-in, we have to flush that line, and we do meter that. And then we have every year we have to take down a third of our steel reservoirs for cleaning, so we actually calculate how many gallons we're actually draining out, because we can't take them all the way to the bottom. Otherwise, we pull air into our distribution system, and the public doesn't like us charging for air instead of water, so.
Okay, so it's water that we're using.
Yeah, it's
For one
water
reason
that's
or
just
another.
part of doing business.
But we don't account for it separately.
We account for it and we do report it, but it's not, we're not gaining any revenue from it. We paid for that water to the water authority.
Right.
But no one else is paying us for it, so it is a.
It is
unbillable.
unbillable, but it's a
But it is
a
metered.
separate category.
But it's a
Correct.
cost.
Under unbillable.
And that's what part of the team we're doing right now is, American Water Works Association put this whole thing together, and the state is implementing it, and there's all these different categories. And so you punch in all your numbers, and then they pretty much tell you where you're at, where you can improve efficiencies. And so that is in progress right now.
So 5% to you nationwide is pretty good.
That's on the low end.
That's very
It
good.
is on the low end for
Okay.
agencies, but
I
but
haven't-
we definitely are trying to improve.
I haven't seen any agencies under about 3.5% total unaccounted for. That's getting pretty low.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good with you, it's good with me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, so that information was presented. The next three slides are very detailed about how those costs you saw before were calculated. If there's any questions, I'll entertain them, but those are just pretty detailed calculations that you have before you. This one of the points that we paused out last time, and I'll pause here as well for consensus, is we are looking at the broader supplies of water that we have, OMWD, San Diego County Water Authority, DSAL. Question on a rate study like this is how do you allocate those to the individual customers? And it's very typical to group them into classes of customers. Customer classification is a grouping of customers into homogeneous groups or classes, and that's what it means. And rather than be arbitrary, we said, well, we currently have meter size as our customer classification. We had considered going to customer type as a way of classification. And so what we did is did a measure of variability, it's called standard deviation, and we broke up all the usage in a couple of years. We didn't want to do just 1 year. We had 1 year done for you last time, but in case it was an anomaly, we wanted to do at least one more year and see. And what this little table tells us is that when we group by meter size, variability, meaning how far from the average do people use water, is between 93% and 160%, 164%. When you broke them up by customer type, the variability was greater. It was 96% to like 260%. So when you hear always the word, do your homework with these cost of service studies, a lot of litigation out there, and you have to show you're not just being arbitrary with what you're picking. So at this point, I'm going to look for consensus to say, do we go forth with a meter size? If we stick to what we have now, a grouping by meter size, it seems to be the one that's more homogeneous. And if you're all right with that, we'll go forth with the meter size category.
That would be my recommendation. Go ahead.
Again, we're gonna go back to, we're doing to our customer base something that's difficult to do. We're increasing their rates for two separate and distinct reasons. One is because of the meter size. That be correct?
No, we actually have meter size now. That's the way, so it wouldn't be a change from what we're doing now.
I thought we're changing some of that, though.
We-
That's
at
how
the-
we're billing during the meter size.
We considered it.
It was considered at the last cost of service study, but it wasn't adopted.
Oh.
So we're currently at meter size now.
Oh,
Never mind.
So we stuck with, at least currently, we're still with meter size as the class.
oh, we're still at the same, we did, okay. That was the last thing you brought forward to us, though, right? We're showing,
That was the last study done. We're showing customer type. So if the consensus is to,
I feel as whatever is the closest to what people are really using is the appropriate way to go.
It's kind of surprising to me. Intuitively, I would have thought going to customer type would be a lower deviation.
it is in some agencies,
Yeah.
and that's the one point I made last time. There's not one That's perfect. Where you'll see it is where a lot of the meter sizes are the same. Irrigation for us, for example, we've got 5/8 inch irrigation meters, we got 2-inch irrigation meters, there's a lot of variability. But not all agencies are like that.
And I'm just gonna, consensus, Gino, coming from me, I've learned something different in the last 3 years of Vallecitos, not including this year, but the last 3 years, earlier years, that there's a ta-da moment. And the ta-da moment is, well, you approved A in February, you approved B in March, you approved C in April, so ta-da, it's $2,000 an acre foot in September. So that's something that I like what you say you're doing, but the bottom line is going to be the proof's in the pudding to me.
Yeah, this is mostly methodology and getting the rates together, and then as we progress with the budget, you'll see real numbers too.
But it is important for staff to get some direction because it takes a considerable amount of effort to look at it one way versus the other. So we want to make sure we're checking in, that we're going in the right direction. And yes, at the end, it's math. We'll get down and we'll come up with rates, and we know that the board is very interested in what those rates will be.
Right, and I think staff will know them pretty closely before we get to that moment. But they won't be sharing that.
Well, you'll see something today.
Well, in the past, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In the past. In the future, I expect different, but in the past, it's the ta-da moment, and vote on it tonight.
We'll try to minimize the ta-das going forward.
As I said, and we'll, even at the finance committee meeting, every meeting we have, we'll kind of update you on the progress. I provide a
And
lot
I'm
of.
sorry they're taking so long, as we heard from someone today, because criticize for short meetings, criticize for long meetings. What do you do?
This is a very important one to take your time, and that's why the details presented so we understand it. So the questions are very much welcome, and it's very important that we do understand the process, because like I said at the end, we're going to be asking you to adopt, not just accept this report. So it's good that you're kind of building up with us.
Jeff,
And since meter size is not the normal way that if the city of San Diego look around, the only thing I ask from a legal perspective is we're able to show that if I've got a 1-inch or less meter and I'm allocated, so many, when you look at your tier rates, I get, for example, less than 1 inch, you get 4, according to this tier limits, you get 4 units. And if I happen to be next door to somebody that has an acre of property, there's fewer of those meters, but I have an 1.5 inch meter, I get, according to this, 32 units at the same price. So all I'm asking is that we are clear and it's simple and understandable that we can differentiate the basis for why we're charging the 1 inch guy this rate and the 1.5 inch meter at this rate, because it has to be based upon, hey, it costs more to deliver it to the 1 inch guy than it does to the 1.5 inch, because that's who your users are. Pretty much 2,200 customers are your 1 inch or below meter size. So those are the ones that you want to, you don't want to discriminate against those folks.
That's a good point. You'll see that written up in the study too, and that hopefully you'll get a draft of that as well soon. Okay, so going forward, looking at the next step would be, all right, now how do we go to those sources of water to tiers? So again, it's the cost of service study is not just looking at cost, it's looking at behavior too. So what we did, and this is 220,000 bills that we look at each year. We went from 2013 to 2016, looked at data, and looked at it 3 different ways. We said, what is the average minimum use, which means, some people, the lowest they'll use in a year is 4 units, some people, the lowest they'll use is 8, some is 2. Well, what's the average of those low points? And that's what you see on the left. Those are the average minimums. In the middle is the average averages, and on the right is, well, what's the maximum people use? Some use 60 units, some use 18 as a maximum, some use 30, but they average out to be 21. So these were important because we wanted to have meaning, not just arbitrary tier limits. We wanted to be able to say, what we're trying to do is isolate the 3,840 from before. The tier 1 is going to be the OMWD water. Well, at the minimum use, that comes closest at 5,195. Then what we did is did iterations, and okay, well, 6 won't do it, what is 5, what is 4? And so we did iterations in the cumulative, the consumption use model, we accumulated usage, and show you what the result is here.
I'm sorry, Tom, if you could go back to that?
Yeah.
You have to walk me through it a little bit, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So the top left-hand side, the average use 2013 through 2016 was 6 units.
The average minimum. That's the average lowest that people used.
Minimum
At a
average
12-month
use.
period, you know, the lowest on average was 6
And it captured 2922
units of water. Yeah, or excuse me, acre feet of water, yeah.
out of the total.
Out of those 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch meters. So in other words, we plug in a number, a consumptive use model that we have to say, what if the tier was 6? How much water would we accumulate under that tier?
Okay.
Looking at all the billing records, so, yeah.
Okay, so you have the average use. Oh, okay, average use of 13 units?
Correct, in that period of time.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you again that question. Is that period of time indicative of what we use today?
Well, it's through December 2016.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah.
Okay.
We've gone up a little bit. It was 12 during the depth of the, conservation, kicked up a little bit. It was, probably less than a unit is rounding, so that has changed, but,
Okay.
yeah. So, okay, so after we
If I
have the,
may,
question. I'm
Just
sorry.
in relationship to that, Tom,
Mhm.
and I don't want a lot of effort put into it, but I would be curious to see what the average was for 2013 versus 2016.
Yeah.
If that's something that's simple and easy to do, and you
It's
could
simple and
probably
easy.
just send it out in an
Yes,
email.
we have Mike
to-
here.
Already
done. Mike makes it simple and
Oh, I
easy.
should have forgot we had the whiz kit.
We'll
Okay,
we'll get that out to you.
oh, I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right.
Okay. So that's a way just to assess, what can we use that's not arbitrary to establish tiers? That's where San Juan got into trouble, just using multiples and arbitrary numbers. So now what we're doing is isolating the actual use. And we used the 2016 numbers adjusted up to kind of simulate what demand we're projecting. So we're using real numbers, a real life database of numbers. And Mike was able to come up with these tiers. And this is kind of what we anticipated. It's what Black and Veatch ran into when they did their model. Right now, our highest tier might capture 5%. It was modeled to capture 10% before conservation. But our highest tier, how we're looking at it here, desal water, that's about 27% of our demand. So we knew we would have this situation where it wouldn't fly too well with our customers if their highest tier kicks in on their 15th unit, because that's what this is saying here. And you don't know until you run the numbers in the model. So what we did is we took another approach. We went back to this table that we did and said, well, look at that max use. Wouldn't it make sense maybe, customers that use above the average maximum, maybe that should be a tier that kicked in. And coincidentally, what it did is it captured another 1,800 acre feet of usage if we added that to the second tier. That's about half of the committed desal. So we took another approach, an alternative to look at it. And then we came up with this table, and this is the same thing we looked at, but it's taking the 3,500 acre feet contractually that we have of desal and saying, well, half of it is in tier 2 and half of it remains in tier 3. That's all we did on here. And it smoothed it out a lot nicer the way these are just projected costs, not the retail, these unit costs, but it kind of gives you a feel for the differential. And don't forget, 80% of our costs are wholesale. So it gives you kind of a good idea of the spread. And now, with this model, your highest use will kick in on unit 22. It's a little bit better than kicking in on unit 15. So we went forth, and I guess, this is another stopping point to look, and you take a little bit to absorb this in. But going forward, here's a comparison where we're at now with the tier. And this is just looking at since most of our customers are 5/8 inch meters, this is looking at the smaller meter. These are the tier breaks we have now, and its retail cost You know, it's what our customers pay on the left-hand side. Obviously, we don't have those numbers now. We're just using projected numbers for this study. So the middle column and the columns on the right are using our projection of cost only, the cost component. But right now, we have 5 units of water at Tier 1. That's supposed to be the wholesale cost. It's a little bit less because we didn't pass through the whole wholesale cost. 5 at 1, and then we have another tier, units 6 through 17. This is currently, and then Tier 3 goes from 18 to 36, and we have a Tier 4 for any use over that. With the original model, when we ran it, we would have had, and we are suggesting 3 tiers. 3 tiers through 0 through 4, and then 5 through 14 on a Tier 2, and then all usage above that 15 will be at the highest cost. With this alternative that we did by splitting the desal into Tiers 2 and 3, it bumped up that Tier 2 limit to 21 units. So now, you know, somebody can use up to the average max and still not go into Tier 3.
Or not leave Tier 1.
Tier 1's only 4 units, yeah.
Oh, right, you're right. I get you.
But why are you recommending only 3 tier levels instead of 4 tier levels?
We have 3 sources of water, you know, and that was kind of how we started. 3 is pretty common in the industry, and 3 we can, you know, easily tie to our sources of water. The split is still not arbitrary, which is a good thing. You know, instead of just arbitrarily splitting it, we actually can point to 21. There's meaning to it. That's the average maximum use.
And we're trying to position ourselves so that we have the most defensible document. The criticism of like a San Juan Capistrano is that they did not do they didn't show the math, how they figured out the costs in succeeding tiers. So when you tie the 3 tiers of the 3 different supplies of water, we believe it's more defensible.
And I understand, but how does that relate to having 4 tiers? You can still have a 4th tier for the water hog.
You could, but then when you call them a water hog, you have to demonstrate that it costs you more to deliver water to that water hog, not just to be punitive to keep them from using more water.
Didn't we used to demonstrate that, or we were illegal back last year?
Yeah, we had court cases that came out with San Juan. It made us, every agency, you know, did cost of service studies and looked at that and reevaluated, because some of them were, frankly,
I'm trying to think as a
not very
customer.
supported.
As a customer, if I'm usually in Tier 2 and sometimes wander into 3, I go, whew, at least I'm on 4.
Yeah.
Now, as a customer who was in Tier 2 and 3 is now going to be in Tier 3 for the majority and paying a lot more for water. You get the psychology of what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
That's what it's about. It's not about your numbers. It's about how the customer looks at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's another consideration you have to take into effect. This highest tier, by the way, you know, when we ran these numbers with the projection, is lower in price, so that's kind of a mitigating factor. It's probably going to come in less than where we're at now.
But, I mean, you're using 36 units of water. You're using a lot of water.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a big meter
The
unit.
rating of the meter for a 5/8 inch 3/4 meter is about 20, after you take into the GPM
Yeah.
rating, 25 units is really what it's rated for a month.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take into account peaking or anything like that. But yes, that's a lot of usage for a small meter. Of course, your bigger meters get the bigger lot.
Please, thank you. So what we're doing then is the Tier 2 is changing from the 14, which we were suggesting using the desal. They're picking up 7 additional units of water at the same price,
The price goes up a little bit because some of the high-priced
Right.
desal is now on that Tier 2, if that's the one we go with.
But significant drop in that tier from what the current shows at 412.
This is only wholesale costs on the middle and the right column. So
Oh,
there'll
okay,
be. and-
that's, true, you told me that.
Yeah, and I do have a slide later that will just with estimated costs. I didn't put it up front because it's only estimates, what it might be with our retail portion after.
Well, I think what I personally like about what you've done is I can understand, I think I could explain to a customer
Mhm.
what we were doing with our water sources and why they're each more expensive and why we're attributing them. And I could justify, if I've got this right, I could justify the second tier because if you are maximum average user in the last 3 years, you would fall, well, you'd be 20, yes, you'd fall within those tiers, whereas before you would have gone on up. Is that correct?
Yes, another way of saying, just paraphrasing it, as long as you don't go above the average maximum, you won't, that tier 3 doesn't kick in.
Right.
If you don't go above the average maximum.
Okay, and then 3, I like that it sounds like from what Jeff and also the GM is saying, 3, we're trying to make ourselves legally defensible by
defensible.
not doing anything extra. So can we just have like a little caveat that says if you use more than X amount, we're gonna hit you with a $500 fine? Just-
Can't do that.
No.
No, well, just thought we'd try.
Has to be by, yeah,
Right.
there is other provisions in California Constitution for penalties, but they actually set what they are, and then they also set what that revenue needs to be used for, so.
Okay, all right.
It's something we can look into, but it's not that easy.
Just a clever way of dividing it up.
Can you explain to me why we went from, in our current 5 units in the tier 1 to now we're talking about 4?
Yes, I'll back up. So the current study, what we're using currently is 2 cost of service studies ago is when we did away with, just to give you a history over here, and this will all be in a cost of service report, the history. We used to have a frugal user discount.
Right.
And with Prop 26 especially, it was, wow,
Mhm.
you know, we're not on good legal ground offering this. And what we did is an alternative, we had to do away with that, but we said, you know, we can carve out the first 5 units, which is a little arbitrary, but we can carve out the first 5 units and say, we're gonna just charge this at the wholesale cost only. So it was a way to,
Yeah.
this is going away, and then we're gonna give it to everybody, so it's not discriminating against just somebody who uses less water. This goes to every customer, this first 5 units. That's why that's there.
Yeah.
But now we're saying, you know what, we don't want anything arbitrary at all. We want a much more defensible rate study. So now we're gonna focus on supply, we're gonna focus on customer usage, we're gonna come up with more meaningful tier breaks.
So the 4 units is more, yeah.
4 is this.
It's
The 4 is, actually captures OMWD water. You know, if you use up to 4, you're helping capturing that water.
Okay.
I had the exact same question, thank you.
What truck do we get to the retail numbers? I don't know why we're.
Let me go right to the end. Now, they're not this is just for planning purposes, so these are not the numbers that you'll see when we go through budget.
I just want to compare them to the chart you just showed us.
Yeah, that's a good idea here. And unfortunately, I don't, oops, I went past them. If $3.50 for tier 1, $4, and just for comparison purposes, $4.39 for tier 2, $6.80 for tier 3.
Hey, can you compare that to the wholesale cost?
Yeah, it's right below.
It's right below it, yeah, on this slide. Let me see if, I don't want to mess this up. I'm going to see if I can get
So
the.
tier 1 goes up, there's 54 cents.
Okay, how's that?
Let me see if I can get that bigger for you.
No, it's right here. It was here.
Yeah, okay, that's a little bit bigger for you there.
Thank you, thank you.
And again, rough projections, but it kind of gives you an idea, you know, of how they compare to each other. And these are projected numbers. Okay. I'm going to bounce back up to where I left off, if that's all right. We'll get to that. Let's see, okay. So, yeah, stop at this point and ask for consensus. Hopefully you've had enough information to look and see if you'd rather look at the one in the middle. That's the raw data and how it captures the different sources of water that we have. And then the one to the right says, let's split the committed desal between 2 and 3, and it works out to be not an arbitrary number, because it was going up to that average maximum use. And it's telling our customers, if you use less than the average maximum use, you will not incur Tier 3 water cost. And staff's recommendation would be to continue with that last scenario where we're splitting 2 and 3, and the tier limits are 4 and 21. So I'm asking for consensus from the board
I would
to
concur
go
with
forth with
staff.
that.
I don't know. Are you guys good?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I do too.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
Before you move on. You'd mentioned the OMWD
Mhm.
source of water, and that you had put in 3840 because was that what we had budgeted in the current year?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The 3840.
3840 is the 4,060 units that were produced, plus the 5.6 for unbilled water. And,
okay.
so that's with that. And then
So
I
you-
checked with our operator, and he also checked with OMWD operator, and said, yeah, no, that's going to continue.
I mean, my recommendation is if we can easily get more water, let's.
Oh, yeah, no, we
reflect
do.
that.
They like it when we take more,
Right.
when
But
unless
it
they
has-
have.
It has a big impact on rates.
Oh, absolutely,
obviously,
yeah,
if it's
no,
a
we'll
if it's the
continue
cheapest.
to take what we can, yeah.
It seems you have all the necessary components to show us if we pick the staff recommendation, how much we're talking about.
I'm sorry.
What components are we missing to extrapolate what it's gonna cost?
All the cuts that are coming.
Well, we don't have our budget numbers yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, we're really talking about a methodology, and we'll come up with some estimates of costs, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
this is all about cost recovery. So when the budget determines what costs need to be recovered, then we'll apply the methodology, and it'll determine the rates.
The one thing I'll be coming back with you with is a draft of the cost of service study when I have the spreadsheet complete, and sending that to legal for review, an RFP for a legal review. And at that point, we're not going to have budgeted numbers because we want to get those review comments before that. But they'll have a projection of numbers, but they don't care about the magnitude of the numbers. They're going to be looking at methodologies and practices and seeing if we're consistent with 218 and California Constitution and common law and all that stuff. So this is ahead of numbers because we need to get a legal review on it. It's methodology, like General Manager Plume said. Okay. Now, you don't have to look at this next slide I'm going to show you.
Oh, good.
This is to show you a process and what we're doing. There's a lot of small numbers on it. We could go into more detail on it at the Finance Committee meeting if that's the goal. This is where all the numbers kind of come together and roll up into the study. Basically, what we're trying to do with the cost of service study is roll up all of our costs that are recoverable from rates under the rate. So what do we have for water? A ready-to-serve charge and a commodity charge. So what we're doing here, a little bit different than other cost of service studies, because we're allocating demand too, we are allocating, the first numbers you see aren't dollars, the first number you see are acre feet of water and how they roll into the different tiers. The first column is, well, we'll replace it with the budgeted numbers when we have them. The next column, offset, means that we have revenues that can help offset our expenses. If we didn't pull them out before we put it under the ready-to-serve charge or put it under the commodity, we'd be double dipping. So we want to be able to take revenues, and I've got a slide here for that. These are some of the expenses, or all the expenses that are impacted by our revenue offsets. In other words, we collect pumping charge for those customers that are in a higher elevation. That's a surcharge, so we're going to back that out of our pumping costs before the rest of the ratepayers recover that pumping cost. So that's an offset that we back out. Interest, income, the late lock fees that we charge, engineering fees, all these things. Property tax is a big one. We get property tax revenue. We don't budget for it in our O&M budget, but we're not going to charge a customer, we're going to charge them less for capital replacement. We're going to offset capital replacement costs with that property tax. There's also investment earnings too in our replacement funds. So by the time you get down to here, just to go back to this one, those numbers, those are the same numbers you see in that offset column. And then we spread those numbers out to where they belong. Another thing we do, and again, this is not a slide for you, unless you have questions and digging into it, but just to show you the progress. How do we distinguish operating costs from Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3? And this was mentioned the last time we met, that there's a base cost, and this is the common method used in rate service studies, and it's called base extra capacities. It means that there's certain costs are incurred because of peaking. So these are numbers right out of our master plan, our peaking numbers. The average daily demand, we assign a factor of 1. When we look at max day demand, we size some of our facilities to meet max day demand, like storage, treatment facilities, pumping facilities are sized to meet max day demand. Max day demand for Vallecitos Water District is 1.9 times an average day's demand. Some facilities we size to meet max hour, like our transmission and distribution facilities. If we look at a max hour compared to an average hour, it's 3 times more. So that's another factor. So those factors, coupled with spreading out the demand in each of those categories, comes up with these percentages. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of how they're calculated. I just wanted to show off a little bit. Okay, so those numbers roll into the big spreadsheet that you saw before. Just wanted to spend a little time on capital expenditures, how volatile it is when we plan and we do condition assessments and budget what we're going to spend money on. We do a 5-year spending plan. And what I've done here, and again, this is old numbers, this was from the last budget, but just to kind of show you an example, how volatile, even budgeted capital replacement is volatile. The green line is what we reserve, and that's kind of an estimate. So what we've done for the cost of service study is to say, what we will do when we have budgeted numbers, is to look at instead of going like this with rates to recover capital, we look at the 5 years spending and average it out per year. So that 2 million something you saw before is the 5-year average spending. And then it's reduced for property tax income and other income. Another thing we do for capital cost, and say, well, how are we going to spread it out to base the meter charge? How do we spread it out to Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3? We look at all of our capital, historical cost of capital. We spread that out with those same peaking factors that we used, and then we come up with a percentage here. So it's just a way to not do anything arbitrary, but to look and see, well, is most of our infrastructure deal with pumping? How much of it deals with water treatment? How much of it deals with transmission and distribution? Those are impacted differently from peaking. So we come up with those percentages to spread our capital costs. And then this is the slide you saw before. So what we have over here is, missed the slide. Yeah, that's fine. What we have here is where you actually develop the rate. So we've been at the cost allocation, and next is developing the rate, where all those numbers you see at the top of this little table, were the numbers at the bottom of that big spreadsheet where we allocated all the costs. So we associated an amount with ready to serve. There's 2 components of the ready to serve charge. One is related to the meter itself, so it's capital cost, it's meter maintenance costs, meter replacement costs. It's all things that change depending on the size of the meter. But so it's all rolled up there, the 12.3 million. It also includes a lot of costs that pass through from the Water Authority. About 7 million is our projection in cost from the Water Authority. And then there are some costs that doesn't matter if you have a 5/8" meter or a 10" meter, it costs the same. That's sending out a bill. So you see that those costs that roll up there, that $700,000 is related to billing and administration. And then commodity charge, we talked about that, how those costs roll up, and most of those, again, are wholesale costs. So this table gives us a cost per meter equivalent. So a 3/4" meter is 1. 1" meter is going to be like 2.5 or something like that. The meter equivalents go up, and so that portion of the rate goes up. So what I wanted also to show you here, and this is what we jumped ahead to before, is how much of these costs that were estimated, and again, these are only estimates because we don't have wholesale costs yet either, but roughly how much of it is going, is passed through from the Water Authority, and how much of it is costs incurred from operating Vallecitos Water District. And that's what you see here on this graph. So more than about 57% or so is, of the meter costs comes from the water authority, our wholesale costs. And then on the tiers, 85% is from wholesale pass-throughs, 75% on tier 3. And I'll, hopefully for the finance committee meeting, I might have some, and again, based on projections, but some numbers to show you about, people that use this much water compared to this much water compared to this much water, what might the differences look like? Again, a preliminary look, but just something to show you. I was hoping to have that ready for you for this meeting, but I don't. Little timeline about where we're at now. So on February 1st, we presented to you some different considerations, got some consensus to go forth with an internal study. Today, we can check that box off. You used Charger Gold and the both for the check off. See how fast we're moving away, as fast as the Chargers left San Diego. That's how we're plowing through here. And so now we presented actually the development of the rates. And we're just going to continue with the progress each time we meet. We'll give you an update because we do want to bring you in. That's the benefit of doing it internally. If you waited for an outside consultant, they'll give you 2 or 3 meetings to come before the board. But we want to be before you every time with an update. On April 19th, I hope to have together the actual draft of the cost of service study. Again, it will be with placeholder numbers, the estimates we have. And the actual rate model will be established as well. What I want to have is everything ready to send for a legal review if the board desires at that point. And then the workshop, hopefully by May 29th, is when there's a lot of synthesis where the actual recommended budget numbers will be in the cost of service model, so we can get a better look at that too. And at time of adoption of the budget, hopefully simultaneously, we will be adopting the budget, the cost of service study, and then approving the 218 notice to go out. And then you were already presented with these numbers, but just to show you again, these dates and tentative schedule, but hopefully we can meet this schedule. Takes a while to prep the notice and get it out there, but assuming that we can mail the notice on June 19th, 45 days after that, we have a public hearing. We might not adopt rates on August 2nd. It might be the following meeting, but September 1 gives us a little time to consider rates. That will be the first. That's the ready to serve and sewer charges. Those fixed charges go into effect each fiscal year. The commodity charges go into effect each calendar year. So this list will take us through so that in 2 years from now, when we go through this, we'll already have rates set. We're not having to rush to get that. September 1 is really supposed to be July 1, but because we go through budget is so close to the effective date of July 1, it usually gets pushed out. So that gives us a little breathing room to adopt 2 years, 2.5 years of rates. And again, that's up to the board when we go through the 218 process and considering our mailer, our notice. And that's all I had for you. Unless there's any questions. Yeah, that's it.
Could you go back to the revenue offset slide?
Sure.
A question on the pumping.
Yes.
The fact that pumping charges is less than the total before offset, is that because we're under collecting or?
No, pumping is everything. Pumping is maintenance on the pump stations. It just so happens that electrical is the biggest cost, so you still have some operational costs, but our pumping charge only covers power. But the pumping is related to all operational,
Okay.
labor, materials, all that stuff.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank
Can
you.
you go back to the timeline? So you're looking at,
This page?
yeah, you're looking at a 2-year,
That would be this page.
thank you. You're looking at a 2-year rate increase.
Yeah, and that's really,
Really
up to
great.
the board might want to do 1 year, the board might want to do 5 years, 4 years. It's really, as we go through the 218 process.
18, it's 18 and 19, it's 19 and 20, the way they have it here.
It's kind of like 2.5,
But that could-
so that 2 years
But
you're
I
not.
just don't want to get into the same thing that
Right.
5% a year, but
Yeah.
it starts,
Yeah, we'll-
right away, so it's actually 15. I don't want to, I'm just trying to
Right,
avoid that.
yeah, we'll lay out the percentages and the increases.
So you're recommending that we do this, or are you just putting it out there?
Putting it out there, it's really going to be up to the board. This would be my recommendation if you were looking for a recommendation. It gives us 2 years of rates, and then 2 years from now, when we're going through this process, we'll at least have already rates in place for that July 1, so we don't have to push off that date.
Remind us again when fiscal year 2020 ends?
Fiscal year,
Not fiscal year 2020, but the year, fiscal year 19, when does that end?
June 30th,
2020.
2019. No, when
Okay, so the
accounting
2020.
nerds, when finance nerds say fiscal years, they usually mean the fiscal year ending that year. It's the year that ends. Yeah.
So that with your proposal here, when you say fiscal year 19 and 20, when does that end?
Starts on July
When
1,
do we go through this process again?
2019, and ends June 30, 2020.
I don't know if you connected the dots on that.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So I'm not, and again, that's really up to whatever you tell us on that one. So, any other questions?
Only just going to make a comment that you wanted to have a presentation on May 29, and that's Memorial Day. So I won't be
Did I pick the
here.
wrong day?
It's
supposed
the
to be
last-
that, oh, okay.
It's the last day in May, but I was just writing it down, I thought, oh, it's Memorial Day on
Well,
Monday.
am on or around?
Okay.
May 29.
Just-
We'll schedule it there. Yeah.
I would just like to compliment the creative approach to, I feel the tiers tied to the meters at this point are much more equitable to our customers. And I understand the need for it to be a defendable process. So I'm impressed with the details. Unfortunately, numbers kind of run through my head and out, and sometimes I got it and I'll go home and tomorrow and go, oh, now I forgot. But I feel, thank you who all were involved in this. Is very interesting and quite different approach. And it'll certainly, like you say, the proof is in the pudding, so we'll see what the rates turn out to be. But I think as a methodology, good job.
Very good, thank you.
Could you back to the timeline just before this one?
Sure.
The 19th, the draft cost of service rate structure study complete, and that means that's what the board needs to adopt it. That'd be correct?
No, it's just a draft to send for legal comment. We'd want to get legal comments back before we actually asked you to adopt it. We'd be, with this tentative schedule, hopefully June 7 would be the actual date that we'd be asking you
But
to
the
adopt.
19th is when we get the whole package.
Correct, yeah, when you will have a budget, at the same time you're approving the budget. So in other words, if you didn't approve the budget, that would get kicked out too. We wouldn't ask you to approve the cost of service study if you didn't approve the budget. And on the agenda, you'll probably see the budget ahead of the cost of service study,
And you plan for this being one of our regularly scheduled meetings?
That's the board discretion, yeah. That's just a schedule I put in front of you.
Suggesting to you, you think those two items, budget and this draft, is gonna take 3 hours?
Not at that point, because the May workshop is when we're really digging in, beginning into, and I think John actually scheduled one before that as well, so, but that's entirely up to the board discretion, how much they want to dig
Well,
in.
I'd rather have more time than less.
That's why we kind of shooting for June 7, but you have another meeting in June if it got kicked back out to consider.
All right, thanks, Tom. I've got one request to
Thank
speak
you.
on this item. Mr. Hunsaker?
Check the rest of the public.
Yeah, okay. Got it. Mike Hunsaker. I want to mention that over the years that I've watched the VWD, staff has been much more accurate than the county as far as water projections. And it looks fairly reasonable, provided that we have reasonable amount of development. There may be an issue at the tier 1 if you are charging anyone for any water that's below really cost in any manner. And I've been contacted by the Sierra Club just about that sort of issue, about undercharging some people. I think it's also important to note to the public that there's a reason why the water is costing much more than in a wet year, and that is that we pay for reliability. We have fixed contracts, which we pay fixed costs, which help us a lot in the drought years and cost us quite a bit in the wet years. And I think it's important to let the public know that sort of problem. Because used to be $100 per acre foot one time when water was readily available on the spot market. And then it went up to $750, and it's rapidly going all up and down all over the place right now. As far as the distributions, yes, the extreme distributions. Having the standard deviation that large is mammoth, and I think you really need to do some graphs, because when you say minimum average use and maximum average use, those are arbitrary as far as what you consider min, max, or average. If you have a graph and you show those different levels, then it is much easier to comprehend, to get some idea of just what that is. I also want to compliment staff on using 2016 figures. The use of 2014 is the latest date for our master water plan. That's going to be an issue, and it should be. Will all users be subject to 3 tiers? From what I understood previously, we were talking about a take-home commercial food operation having the same tiers as a laundromat. And that's obviously not appropriate. And the ag and single tiers and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 2.3. San Marcos Boys and Girls Club annual auction.
Yeah, this item was placed on the board's agenda just to see if the board is interested in supporting the San Marcos Boys and Girls Club annual auction. Attached in the package is it shows all the different levels at which you can sponsor the event. So we need direction whether the board is interested, and if so, at what level.
Director Snow.
Yeah, and thank you, General Manager Prum. As our board packet indicates, I did, this is on our agenda at my request, and I asked for it to be put on here because, as you can also see in the background, we did previously purchase a table in 2016, and I don't recall, but most likely in prior years before that as well. And because of that, the San Marcos Boys and Girls Club came to me and asked if we were going to do it again. As you guys know, I'm not in a position to say yes or no on behalf of the board, so thus I bring it forward to all of us tonight.
Director Hernandez.
Well, I certainly would be favorable of participation of any of the board members taking a seat there without per diem. But in the last 2 times we've done this, we can't fill the table, and then it looks a little bit silly. We bring friends and family and individuals off the street to fill it. So, excuse me, I'm a little reluctant to just jump in to sponsor a table that we have not filled in the last 2 times.
Yeah, gosh. Between now and a year ago, to me, is like the difference between night and day in our staff. I would like to see first, if it's possible, that with our staff, that it is fillable along with the directors, and offer it up to our general manager to make a decision on that, if he would like to have his staff be able to go for it or not. I don't think the purchase of a table is astronomical at $1,500 as an outreach proposal. We spend more on that than having 100 fifth graders here. And this is very much open to the exposure of the people in town that we want Vallecitos to be known with and for. So I have no problem with it, but I would like to see giving them a qualified answer, and then maybe we could direct the general manager as to if we're going, and then he could see if he wanted to, if he would like to go, and or his staff along, and maybe if we can fill a table, I would like to buy a table. If we can't fill a table, I would like not to. And I think the directors, and I know that Mr. Sinella has done this in the past, if they invite their husbands or wife, they pay for that. They pay
Yeah.
$150 to the district for that. So there's no cost whatsoever for the board members, husbands or wives, or significant others in my case, or insignificant others in my case.
There's no cost to the district.
Right. There's no cost to the district in doing that. But I think once we give the general manager the numbers, he can see and make a decision whether he thinks that there's 10 people that would like to go.
I would support that wholeheartedly.
That's my direction.
I also support that, and I would love to see more staff participation. However, I also, while I agree that if a board member wants to bring a +1, the board member should pay for that +1. But I do sometimes wonder that for just general employees of the district, maybe the reason why the participation rate has been, some of it, I think it's been just the kind of the culture that's been come from top down in the past. But it's tough to break away from a Friday or Saturday night from your family and your spouse or significant other, and it may be a lot to ask of our employees to pay for their spouse at $150 to go. So I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with paying for my wife to go if she's going to come with me, but I'd be somewhat willing to have a conversation about if staff members being able to bring a +1 as part of that table.
My understanding, being with passive boards, is that there's a legal problem with that, of paying for a spouse's meal versus your own as an official. But I don't know how that corresponds, so Mr. Scott, if you could answer us, because, I'd have no problem with staff bringing their wives on comp as well.
You're in it for $1,500 one way or the other, right?
Yeah. But you tell me if there's a legal reason for it. As
Well,
elected,
those provisions in the FPPC really relate to directors. And with respect to the spouses and getting one free ticket for the director, and then more appropriate for the spouses to pay for it. But I don't know that necessarily carries over to staff.
Well, that's a caveat I'd like to add to as far as direction, is that if the staff would like to bring a spouse, as long as it's legally not a problem, and we've already taken the spaces we're going to, then I would have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea.
Well, as you know, I don't believe that the Boys and Girls Club, particularly a fundraising event, has any direct correlation with the water district. It doesn't bring any benefits to anyone of our ratepayers. I do think if their kids, we spent $1,500 on their kids, and they were to learn something educational and worthy of conservation or learning how water, then I say there's a direct benefit to the ratepayer. But I have one major difficulty. I just do not believe the ratepayers should be paying anything for us to go to a fundraising event for an organization unless we're going to do it for every worthy cause in the community, which is not a request I'm making. Secondly, I feel like it's not really appropriate for a board of directors to, it's an offer to fill the table, but I feel it's just not appropriate for us to even expect staff to go beyond their working hours to represent this district at any function. If they want to go, or you want them to go, it would be great if you wanted to invite them as your guest, or you wanted to pay for them. But I just feel that the ratepayers don't want us to also then pay and ask our employees to attend an event, and many of them don't even live in our community or even use the Boys and Girls Club. And if we're going to fill the table, I don't also understand how we can offer it to spouses and what do you call them, significant or insignificant others. If we're filling the table, then we need 10 people to fill it, and it's the 10 people. But my feeling is it's totally inappropriate to ask the ratepayers to pay for this. And if we were going to ask any employees to do it, it would turn out to be people on our outreach. If we want to spend money to be seen and to be great participants in the community, I would suggest we take some money and we offer 2 rain barrels and a free class in water something, or tickets to the water conservation garden, or discounts to nurseries that's from Vallecitos, and we're trying to encourage being water-wise. That tells them we're supporting their business, we're supporting our community, and we're maybe supporting our ratepayers. And that's water direct. But just a table with our name on it, I wouldn't even want to ask my ratepayers if that was okay. So I can't support it at all.
Thank you. Director Murray.
Yeah, and I would definitely put it under outreach. It's 100% outreach. As you mentioned, it's a fundraiser for a 501c3. All the money they derive from this goes to the children, goes to the kids. It is a place where I think our staff, if they wanted to, no one's break. People have fun at these things. They don't have to go, but people do have fun at them. Some people do, and enjoy it and get the water. 2 things happen. Number one, Vallecitos shows they're concerned about the community in more than just talk. We are the outreach. The 5 of us should be the major part of outreach, not a department where people don't even live in the city. We are the outreach, day in, day out, at the gas station, at the grocery store, when we're walking down the street. We're the outreach. And that's another place where we are the outreach, and people look at us as, wow, the Vallecitos Water Board, they participated, they care about our community, they're part of the community. That doesn't get through to 5th graders the same way as adults. It's the only thing we do, really, that and the chamber thing that show us as adults in the community. So with that, if you need a motion, I move that we approve a table based upon the commitment to be able to fill the table. And if the board lets the general manager know if they're gonna be able to participate, then the general manager, if he chooses, can ask his people if they want to, and if we can get to 10, that's fine. If we don't, that's fine. To be honest, I'll go one way or the other.
I'll be there one way or the other as well.
I know, most of us would be. So it's really to participate in a community event.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to tentatively approve a table based on the ability to fill that table.
Does this include per diem?
No.
Okay, but I'll make sure that's in there.
Yeah, no.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
It carries 4-1.
Before we move on, can put me down for 2.
2?
And
Well,
so
I'm gonna check.
that takes that 150 off the 1,500 right there.
Well, there you go. Strike that right.
I'll have to let you know.
Okay, we'll reach out.
Okay? Hot diggity dog. Moving on.
All right. Okay, we're to reports. 3.1, General Manager.
Okay, I'll try to keep them brief. I mentioned to the board before that we were working with the school district to do some lead sampling. We completed our portion. We collected the samples, we sent them to the testing lab, we received the test results. We've shared them with the school district, and the school district is taking whatever actions they feel are appropriate based on the results of that testing. So our involvement for now is pretty
And
much done.
we're putting lead in our children.
There was only, out of the 15 samples they took 5 samples at each of 3 schools, and in only one location did they have a test that came up above the action limit. And they are, from what I understand, they're taking, it was I believe, a water fountain, and they're taking that water fountain out of service. They're eventually going to redo, it was at the middle school. They're going to be redoing that whole building where the water fountain is, but until they remove that building, they're going to take the water fountain out of service.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
End up like Flint.
I was going to give an update on Lake Oroville, but I think the board's probably pretty aware of what's going on. They're jockeying back and forth between the main spillway and the emergency spillway, trying to draw down the lake level as much as possible to be ready for the incoming storms. And the mandatory evacuation has been lifted, so it's just a voluntary right now. And the last thing I was going to mention is that due to a lack of a quorum of board members and lack of any urgent items, I will be canceling the March 1st board meeting. We have 3 board members out of town on business engagements. That's all I have.
Okay.
Canceling the first one?
Yeah, March 1st.
3.2, District Eagles.
Well, keeping with the theme of the evening, there's a local case pending before the Court of Appeal. The case is Plantier versus Ramona Municipal Water District, and involves a challenge from a commercial property owner claiming that RMWD is the method of charging service sewer fees based on a parcel's assigned EDU is illegal. There's no rational relationship between the parcel's actual wastewater use, and it violates Prop 218. So the case has been bifurcated, was bifurcated some time ago, with the first phase being whether the plaintiff had properly protested the fees at the water board meeting and exhausted their administrative remedies. So what had happened was, at a 218 hearing, this commercial guy who was getting a raise on his sewer fees didn't attend. None of the plaintiffs attended or raised the issues at the 218 meeting, but he had been talking to staff and had even come to the board earlier complaining about the fees. So the legal question was whether or not he had really properly involved himself, at least in the threshold question. And so the judge, the trial court judge, actually ruled in favor of Ramona. And so it's pending, that first phase is pending before the Court of Appeal. And the reason I bring it to your attention is the case has received a lot of interest throughout the state. The League of Cities, CASA, the Association of Counties have all filed amicus briefs. Now, it's on the very narrow issue as to whether or not this plaintiff has exhausted their remedies. But nevertheless, it's just an example. We'll keep you posted. It's getting some interest statewide. That's all I have.
Thank you. San Diego County Water Authority.
Well, actually, I think most of what we talked about, we've already discussed from the last meeting, and there was also a lot of closed session stuff, so there's not much report there. I have a meeting next Thursday.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. Our last report from the San Diego County Water Authority, it showed that 3 people were retiring, and I wondered if the Water Authority uses retiring as they're replaced, they really retired, and what that means. I don't know, they say retiring, I think if somebody's 65 and they're retiring. Retiring just means not on the board anymore, for whatever reason.
Retiring means that they're leaving the position, and it could be for a variety of reasons.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I was wondering when I read it.
Encina Wastewater Authority, Capital Improvement Committee.
We had our meeting this morning, and we talked about a number of things. We went through our capital improvement project. They're working on the digesters. They're working on the RTO, which is the regenerative thermal oxidizer, which has to do with odor. And then they had potential contract come up for assessment of capital, and Phelan got it. Very interesting in that his price was third highest. I can't believe this, the first two people that were lower by $50,000 was I can't remember, it wasn't a big contract. Didn't fill out all the forms correctly. I mean, it's contracting 101. Forget the numbers, they take care of themselves. But you've got to touch all the I's and cross the T's. So they got thrown out. So that was interesting. And we are moving our meetings to 8 o'clock in the morning. Perhaps more public will show up.
What
Are
time?
they having
Your
donuts?
meeting?
What's that?
Your meeting time is going to be?
8 a.m.
What is it now?
7:30.
Oh.
I was being a
Wow.
bit facetious. We had an individual, our latest board member has a child drop off conflict, so we moved it up for him.
How many board members are there?
13?
You changed the time just
Yeah,
because
but
one
this is,
person, child dropped?
well, this is the capital committee, and the capital committee, there's only 5.
Oh, the capital
Yeah.
committee time.
The capital
changed.
committee
Oh,
time.
okay.
We're already at 8 o'clock on the board meeting, but capital committee was at 7:30, and
You guys-
that kind of put her in a bind, so we gave her a break.
I think it's just 10 directors.
10 directors? Okay.
Okay, I'll report on the Policy and Finance Committee meeting. We met on February 7th. 2 items, we established the meeting dates for calendar year 2017. And we heard a report on the CalPERS discount rate reduction, which has big fiscal ramifications. So CalPERS is changing the rate of return based on actual performance that they've seen, and it's going from 7.5% to 7% phased in over 3 years. And it means, I think, about a $3 million, Tom might correct me if I'm wrong, about a $3 million increase in the net liability of Encina on the
I
return.
haven't seen Encina's numbers yet on that, but it could very well be. It's going to vary. There's a lot of variability between the agencies.
Right. So anyway, it's a big impact. And that was it. 3.5 standing committees. I don't think we've had any since last meeting. 3.6 directors' reports on travel, conferences, seminars. Start with Director Evans.
Yes, I was at the Urban Water Institute Spring Conference in Palm Springs. It was an excellent conference. They had wonderful speakers and did a great job with all the subjects. One of them, I'm not going to have the quote exactly in mind, but it was when they were talking about toilet to tap coming soon. I loved his kind of opening statement that we just need to change the meaning of, we don't use the word wastewater, that water is a resource in all sorts of ways. And that was the mentality thing. I thought, oh, it's a great quote. If I'd have written it down, I'd have to go look at the website to get it exactly. And then there was a wonderful one I won't get into on marijuana, because I'm sure someone else would like to speak on that. And a very interesting report from, I don't remember her first name, is it Spivey Weber?
Francis.
From-
Yeah, the retired
Francis. About the water resource decision to continue with the governor's, not change the mandate. And she is retiring in a few months, so maybe she was feeling a little free to say whatever, but she mentioned how all of these agencies and representatives had been up there and were trying to say there is no drought in these areas and you should treat it like an emergency and apply the drought to where there is a drought. And her response basically was, like, she was sort of indignant that anyone would get up there and question them, and that she wouldn't really, why would she listen to them? I was astounded that someone in that position would actually kind of say, I don't want you to come and speak against it. That was like what I heard more than anything else, was they're not really listening. I'm sorry, Craig.
No, I was
You
gonna
can go
say-
on, you were there, you can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I think her retirement is warranted.
I hope, yes. Anyway, since many of us were there, that's all I'll say on it. It was very good, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and I will pick up on the marijuana discussion, because we've got a full session on that from both the legal, the regulatory, and the grower's perspective. They're gonna be doing different licensing based on square footage. 2,500 square feet, less than a quarter of an acre, more than an acre, and then the fees will be adjusted accordingly. But it was interesting that the rate, the water rate, it's 1 gallon per day per plant per pound. So it's far less water than grapes, far less water than avocados, and tons of money more than each. And so I might have to put a lease on our 13 acres and start growing out there.
I was going to say the most fascinating part to me was the California Growers Association representative there.
Yeah.
Because he did make some interesting points, like up in Northern California, of course, where they're at. And he was very proud to say he was a 3-generation grower. His family been at it for a long time. And he commented that most of the ones up there are a quarter acre or less. And that's kind of typical, but that it is very obvious if it comes south that you're going to start to see the hydroponics in the bigger things. And that's going to be a challenge for, it was the Water Resource Control Board? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That how are they don't even really have a grasp of how to even go about licensing it. And then he talked about how many people they have. There were like 50,000 known growers,
right.
but only 40,000 have known permits.
Right.
And then if you're really small, you don't have to have a permit. And it was so fascinating, the legal complications. And then this, everyone wants to grow it, but in California, you can only sell it to a California for in-state use. And California's ag is almost all export. So the grower was saying eventually that they really think there'll be more marijuana than they can sell.
Right.
So there'll be legislation to do it. It was just fascinating. I could have a whole day about one.
50,000 growers. The total use of all the waters that all the growers are using, 15,000 acre feet total. So it's the largest cash crop, larger than the next two in the state.
As it is right now.
As it is right now. But a lot of that is export, and that won't be allowed. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens.
I attended the Urban Water Institute conference as well. Some good sessions on the Colorado River Basin conditions update, which they usually have at this conference, and that was interesting. Developments on IPR or DPR and stormwater capture. There were some good sessions. Rick and Martin.
I also attended the UWI. Things that struck me, a lot of really good seminars, and there were a lot of really good speakers. The marijuana issue is a joke because it's really a non-issue. What struck me though was that they knew how many employees they were going to have. They're going to hire 22 employees. So then the question was, well, you have to make the permit fees. Well, we only charge so much in permit fees. Yeah, you take 22 and divide it into your total. That's how much you charge. Pretty simple math. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a permit for the ones that are going to use permits. A lot of them aren't, but that's going to be normal. They're growing now. The amount of plants that are out there now are there because they're illegal. Still, they're illegal today. They're not legal until 2018? I think 2018. So it's still illegal right now. But the absolute best part was Gary Arant's rant. He had been up to, as he calls it, and I agree with him 100%, Emerald City. He'd been up to Emerald City and had just gotten back from meeting with
State Water.
What's the guy's name in Emerald City?
Jerry?
Yeah, great.
Well, Jerry, but what's he in the Wizard of Oz?
Oh.
The guy behind the curtain?
The Wizard.
The Wizard. Yeah. He got through these meetings with the Wizard and was really just ripping it. One thing they put him in was for tribes, It was talking about tribes, how we're all in a tribe, and there's many different tribes, many different tribes. And he came out, and what was really nice is pointed out to me by Craig was that the president of Metropolitan was sitting in the back. He had just got there in time to hear this rant. Now, he just ripped this guy a new one, excuse me, over what they were doing with San Diego County and with the money we're not getting and how much we're not a part of it, and how much he is for going native and let you know what, we don't need you, which we do right now, but he was just very good. If you get a copy of it at your next GM meeting, ask him for a copy because it was really excellent job. Thank you.
Actually, I have a copy of it, and I can email it to all of you and bring it to read if someone else would like to hear it. I think Gary's gonna be speaking at if it works out, he'll be speaking at one of the CALU meetings
Oh,
about
good.
his visits to Oz and those things. That would be great. Any guy.
Director Snow?
Yeah, I did not attend that particular conference. However, I did attend the San Diego North EDC meeting last Thursday, and the speaker was new County Supervisor Kristen Gaspar. And given our speaker, the audience was standing room only, quite literally. And in part because of that, the meeting didn't start until much later than the presentation didn't start until much later than it typically does. Well over an hour probably after it should have, and I was not able to watch her speak. However, there was a number of folks in the audience that I did have an opportunity to engage while we were having that expanded socialized networking session, and including one of the board members from the North County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and another gentleman by the name of Dave Pearson, who is starting up some incubators locally here for business incubators that both have quite the interest in talking about water. And then unrelated to that, I'll be serving on a panel next month with Gary Arrett and a couple of others, and I'll, as those details formalize, I'll make sure that everybody here knows when and where, and it's going to be here in San Marcos at our barn actually there in Walnut Grove, so there'll be some more information coming on that.
What's the topic of that? I mean,
It's called Water Everywhere.
Oh.
I might have that wrong, let me double check.
What organization is putting it on?
It's going to be the San Diego Republican Party.
oh, good.
Water Everywhere.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Now, I did have a speaking engagement, I forgot to mention, it was a local speaking engagement, about 20 people. Everything you know about water, used my presentation that I did before for the board, had a wonderful reception, everybody loved it.
The free one?
What's that?
The free one?
Yeah, the one that couldn't, we spent 50,000, but he wouldn't give me 200.
You spent 100.
Did we spend 100?
100.
Oh, even worse. He wouldn't give me 200, the cheap devils.
Yeah.
Okay, other business.
I didn't want to put any salt in the wound right now.
That's all right, that wound's almost healed up until just now.
Yeah.
Okay, other business 4.1, there's information in the board packet on a couple of tours. Director comments, feature agenda items. Let's start with Director Snow.
No, I was just going to mention that I wasn't going to be here on March 1st, but our GM already handled that.
Yeah, regarding March 1st, and I think that's great, we need to reschedule, but we should reschedule, not just cancel. Because canceling is gonna put a ton of us, I'm assuming, that we're gonna stay busy in the meantime, and that puts it all into the 15th, which is 2 weeks later, which will push things into April, which is when we're gonna have very full board meetings. So I'm just saying, there could be a need to reschedule that meeting, not just cancel it. Could be.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at what's coming down with the items that are being brought forward.
Because, you know, and I said this, there used to be 2 meetings way back, 4 years ago, it's not way back. And there were 2 meetings, but one was a workshop, one was a board meeting. And we've kind of given up on workshops, and we're starting to bring them back now, which I think is great. But I think that just canceling the board meeting, which we always do in November and December, but there's not much going on. If there's still stuff going on, we should reschedule and have another meeting rather than push it onto a later agenda on a regular meeting. I don't want staff to have to sit out.
I think let the general manager, if he's got agendas, he'll do it. If not, no need just to show up
Oh, I agree.
at 5 o'clock.
I agree.
Okay. I do have an item. Would you schedule, and Mike, I'll be as accommodating as we can to, but, you know, we can't go out to Lake, South Lake. I'd like to schedule a field trip out to South Lake. But if we went at 5 o'clock, I mean, it'd be damn near dark by the time we got.
Yeah, this wouldn't be open to the public, correct?
No,
Yeah,
just
so
the board
5
members,
o'clock-
but I was
yeah, the
gonna.
5 o'clock's more focused on the public, not
Oh,
on the
okay,
board.
all right, very good.
Well, then there can't be more than two of us. Unless it's a public open meeting, we can't all meet.
Well, we went on tours of the facilities before.
Yeah, we've been on tours before with all of us.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, there's not a specific example of tours of facilities as an exception to the Brown Act. Okay, so I think Hal's right. I know that we've gone to, you know, if you guys go to social events and things like that, that's an exception. But, you know, the danger is that, you know, you're out there together and you start talking about district items and you could be involved with the facility. Hey, what are we gonna do with this thing? So, I mean, I think it's important to keep you separate.
I think the time changes in April anyhow, if I'm not.
When? You know.
Is it April?
In March.
So the time's gonna
Mid-March.
change anyhow, and 5 o'clock is fine.
We're gonna gain an hour.
Yeah, you get an
Yeah.
hour.
Things like March 9th or something like that, so.
Yeah.
That weekend is 12th, 11th, 12th.
Oh, the 12th.
Yeah.
Daylight savings time. So it's
But I
not-
me're gonna
it's
have
not
to
an
do
issue.
we're gonna have to, if I heard you correctly, Mr. Scott, we're doing a 2-2-1 on this thing?
Well, if you're gonna have a, yes, that's what I think that's the better approach for you, is to do a 2-2-1. Okay, I mean, you could notice a meeting out
You
there.
can notice the meeting.
But, you know.
Yeah, so if we notice the meeting and then invite the public.
Right.
Then and with the time change, then we can.
That
do
means
it.
Mike can go.
Right,
Like.
yes, yes. But short of that, I would suggest 2-2-1. I don't think it's a good idea to get all of you together.
I would defer, let the manager figure it
Yeah.
out.
Oh, yeah, great foul.
Would you, Director Hernandez, would you accept them maybe just using a drone to kind of film it and then bring it back and show it to us?
Well, that, for the rest of you, I'm going out there physically. I'm
He's
going
got the
out there to
fishing
touch
poles
it.
already.
I'm going out.
I'd like to attend with you.
There you go.
It's 2-2-1.
We'll let the drone show the rest of them. Let it drone.
And there may be some board members that don't wanna go in that context.
Yeah,
as
maybe.
well.
I want to go by myself.
Privativity.
And everybody else agrees with that. I should go by myself.
No fishing poles.
Yeah, yeah, that's the truth.
Okay, I think we're done. I think we're
We're
adjourned.
adjourned.